Thank you, Tamara. The approval of the agenda, is there any issues? Can we move straight to approving that?
Second.
Okay.
Phil.
Kurt and Phil. Call to approve the agenda? The agenda is approved. Announcements, I understand that we have at least one announcement tonight.
Yeah, it's really not announcing much as a comment. I do try to review all the different emails we get from the public that come in on what we're doing and so on. And this past week, we got one from the Builders Association, which is the first professional group who's even commented on anything we're doing, which I think is important, particularly since it's probably one of the most regulated industries that we encounter. But anyway, they did at least make a comment, which is on file.
Thank you, Phil. Move to the approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the December 1st minutes? Any issues? If not, can we move on to the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Okay. Phil and Bryant? Okay, vote. Approve the minutes. Minutes are approved. We have no reports or old business necessarily. The preliminary report is under the new business. I suppose it could have been old easily enough. Pardon me. Last week, the preliminary report was approved with 3 changes. Those 3 changes were made. The final report was sent out to all of you. We can read the report back into the minutes again, as we did last week. The Kootenai County Optional Forms of County Government Study Commission Summary Recommendation. On July 3rd, 1890, Idaho became the 43rd state in the Union. In the original Idaho State Constitution, the form of county government was mandated as a 3-person board of county commissioners who performed both administrative and legislative functions, combined with 6 co-equal elected officials who performed specific administrative functions that were limited in scope. In 1996, the Idaho State Legislature amended the Idaho State Constitution and passed into law the Optional Forms of County Government Act, Title 31, Chapters 50 through 58. The stated purpose of the Act is to establish optional forms of county government in compliance with Section 12, Article 18 of the Idaho Constitution, Idaho Code 31-5001. Pursuant to Idaho Code 31-5101-1, the Kootenai County Board of Commissioners passed Resolution 2021-56 on May 11th, 2021, authorizing a 9-member Citizens Commission to study the existing form of county government, compare it to other optional forms, and submit a report and any recommendations for change to the board. If the final report recommends one of the Act's optional forms of county government, the Board of County Commissioners may submit the question at the next succeeding general election for the voters of Kootenai County to decide whether to retain the current form of county government or approve the proposed optional form of county government. The Citizens Study Commission met weekly for nearly 6 months, collecting information about the structure and operations of Kootenai County's government. Based on this information, a majority of the Citizens Study Commission supported a recommendation to change the current form of county government from a 3-member board of county commissioners with 6 elected row officials to a commission manager form of government as authorized under Idaho Code 31-5301 through 5312, with a 5-member elected board of county commissioners, a manager appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and no changes to the county's 6 elected row officials. More specifically, a majority of the Citizens Study Commission support the following recommendations. Change the structure from the current 3-member Board of Commissioners to the Commission Manager form of government, Idaho Code 31-5301 through 5312. This form is governed by an elected Board of County Commissioners and a manager appointed by the board. The manager shall be the county budget officer and shall be responsible for the performance of the duties of the county budget officer as provided in Chapter 16, Title 31, Idaho Code, and any other provisions of law imposing duties upon the county budget officer, Idaho Code 31-5303-4. Change the size of the Board of Commissioners to 5 members, Idaho Code 31-5304. The additional members shall be elected for a term of 2 years, with the allotment of the 4-year term between the entire commission to proceed in numerical rotation in accordance with the provisions of Section 31-703, Idaho Code 31-53052. The county clerk shall continue to be elected to a term of 4 years and to perform all the duties and responsibilities of the office, Idaho Code 315307. Per Idaho Code 315303-4, the county clerk will no longer be the county budget officer. The county treasurer shall continue to be elected to a term of 4 years and to perform all the duties and responsibilities of the office, Idaho Code 315308. The county assessor shall continue to be elected to a term of 4 years and to perform all the duties and responsibilities of the office, Idaho Code 315309. The county sheriff shall continue to be elected to a term of 4 years and to perform all the duties and responsibilities of the office, Idaho Code 315310. The county coroner shall continue to be elected to a term of 4 years and to perform all the duties and responsibilities of the office, Idaho Code 315311. The county prosecuting attorney shall continue to be elected to a term of 4 years and to perform all the duties and responsibilities of the office, Idaho Code 315312. If there are no there were 3 changes that were agreed to last week. Those changes were to indicate Idaho Code 315303-4 in 2 points, in talking about changing the structure from 3 to 5, and in talking about the responsibilities of the county clerk. The third item was to note that the additional members would be elected for 2-year terms with the allotment of the 4-year term rotating. Those are in according to the statute, quoted in from the statute. Unless there are other significant issues, then we will go ahead and publish this tomorrow. Brian?
I have one minor issue, and it is regarding paragraph 3, line 3. And I think it is minor, but I think it's also somewhat important, and that is where it says a majority of the Citizen Study Commission, et cetera. I think it should say by a 5-4 majority of the Citizen Study Commission. And the reason I say that is for 2 reasons. Number one, it's accurate, but also when this committee was had our first public comments, we were viewed, I think, by the vast majority of people as being one monolithic, perhaps conspiratorial sort of group that had one mindset and we were bent on doing one thing. And I think by letting the public know that we are actually split on this issue 5-4, it would remove a lot of that feeling in the public that we are a monolithic group with one mindset who were sent here to accomplish one goal. I know a lot of that has probably been ameliorated because of our vote to not change any of the row officials, but or to change them to appointed, but I still think that there may be some of that out there, and it may help the public when they read that to direct their comments in a more focused way rather than in a some of the hostility that we saw. And so those are the reasons that I'm recommending that, and I'm recommending that as to this paragraph and the next paragraph.
I would disagree to the extent that the vote was 5-0. It was 5 pro, 4 abstentions.
No, it was 4 against
No,
on the recommendation.
no. It was, 4 abstained.
No, the abstentions were later in the process.
Can I
Dave?
make a general comment, not necessarily specifically about the 5-4? It may be helpful if we could agree on the intent of this document. This is not a final report. It's not giving the strengths and the weaknesses of the, let's say the 5 and the 4, however we ever decide to do that, Brian. This is really a simple document. And if we are going to have a public hearing because we're required to have a public hearing. The public hearing needs to tell the public what is actually changing. You normally don't go into why it's changing, who said what or whatever. It's just asking, we're going to have a public hearing and asking the public, can you please comment on the 2 changes that we are suggesting, at least 5 people are suggesting. One change is going from 3 to 5 commissioners, and the other change is adding a commission manager. So this is really a notice of what to comment on. The discussion about 5-4 and how we came to our conclusions is more appropriate, in my view, in the report itself, which is what the public will use to vote on. But if we try to make this document into more than it is, it may actually confuse the public more than it will help the public. For me, it's just simply, my experience on public hearing is you communicate the change you want the public to comment on, and that's pretty much what it does.
And I think you make good points, and that's why I was sort of waffling between whether this was a major point that I was recommending or a minor point, because I do understand, I just wanted to help the public to focus.
Yeah.
And
And
that's really it.
And
So,
I think that's a great point. One of the things that I've done, at least on one advisory board, when we have public hearing, is to chair, or in the case of planning and zoning, community development, will have a presentation to say, here's why we're here tonight. We're here tonight to talk about the changes that are being proposed. And we are asking the public to please focus their attention on those comments, where any other comments could be sent to the county anytime they want. So it really is, I think you're 100% correct, is that you want to go and say, look, we're not going to change how the sheriff is voting or is elected. Okay, so you can comment on it, but it really is not something that is going to be changed. And I think that's an important thing, is some kind of a report out about what we are trying to do. And that's the purpose of the notice.
Actually, according to our November 3rd minutes on page 17, it shows that they were a 5-4 vote on both items. It was not abstentions.
Okay,
Yeah, there were some things that were and some things that were not. And
I will
again,
stand corrected then.
yeah. And again, the public will know that when we write the final report for sure, I suspect, Tamara. But that's just, I'm just trying to get it back to getting the notice out so the public, when they show up, will know exactly what they need to comment on. I mean, we can't stop them from commenting on anything, but we really are hoping to comment on these two areas and then get the notice out so we can give them the most time to prepare. And we also, during the notice, when this goes out, however the county does this, we should also tell them they could continue to send comments via the email system to us, and we read all those comments like Phil talked about.
I'd like to add, as one of the members of the writing committee, that's exactly the approach we tried to take. We tried, what you don't know is the iterations that it went through amongst the three of us to try to get it down to kind of the bare bones language that just informed the public of the change. So we spent a considerable amount of time on it, and we felt good about it. We do understand from last week's discussion that there were some points that needed to be clarified, and that actually fed right into still being clear about what the change would be. It clarified the change. So I agree with Dave that we should basically leave the wording the way it is. And that's pretty much what we agreed to last week when we voted.
Further discussion?
They're not major points by any means, but I did send some grammatical suggestions back to Kristen, since we aren't supposed to be discussing them in general, and just sent them directly back. The main one in that regard is the sub-bullet under number 1, which is a quotation from the code. I recommended putting it in quotation marks because we are not consistent in this as to where we use quotation marks and not, to indicate that it is a citation from the code as opposed to a paraphrase or something. And since that aspect of the manager taking on the county budget officer responsibility is code specified, I thought it was worthwhile to put it in quotation marks to show that it's really not negotiable. If we go with the manager form, that's part of the package.
Yeah, and actually I tried, I don't know if you got it, I have a lot of trouble when when I get things on my iPad, for some reason, sending an attachment, but I tried to send it to the other two to get comments on that. A lot of this is quotes, I mean, straight quotes from it. So I understand your point.
Yeah.
The other thing, there were a few things that had to do with subject, verb, and actually something like majority can be a group term and it can be an individual term.
Yeah.
So I think we pretty much decided, because I didn't hear from Brian, I did hear from Dave, to just leave it. Again, this is I hope that the citizens wouldn't read it and go, well, I'm rejecting this out of hand because you didn't put your comma in the right place or whatever. I mean, we kind of did the best we can. I understand what you're saying about the quotes, but a lot of the things were quotes, so then we should have quoted everything.
Right, I was encouraging consistency because in some places you have quotes and in other places you don't.
I think when we had quotes, when we weren't using the whole text, when we were like pulling part of it, like when we say it, in number one, this form is governed by a da-da-da-da-da. You know, it doesn't say in 315103 or in that whole series, it doesn't say this form is governed. So that's how we tried to make the distinction. I do, and I actually did recommend that Kirk be the subcommittee for grammatical nits, because that's what he called himself. So I think when we get to the final document, you're going to come in handy, and I appreciate it.
You may have a run for his money with that.
Yeah. I don't know, he does the grammatical one. She might have other nits, but he's claimed the term grammatical nit, so.
You can have it.
Over my education, I was forced to work with both Chicago and APA, and I can't remember right now which one it was. But one of them, if the quote is in the text, you use quote marks. If the quote is segregated from the text, you do not.
None of these are segregated, so.
Actually, they are. They're separate bullets.
Yeah, bullets is not the same, but we don't need to argue form. That's fine.
It's not put your class.
Anything else?
Nothing from you, it's numbered.
In that case, the report is approved and will be published tomorrow.
Do we need to take a separate action to make an official call for the public hearing? Besides publishing the report, because you could just throw the report up in the air and say, hey, it's available to anybody now. Do we need to do something to officially call for the public hearing? Because there's no call to action in this.
Depending on whether we have to meet next week, we can make that official call either this week if we don't meet next week, or next week if we do, I would think.
That's my only question, is there's no call to action in this. This is just simply a, hey, this is what we're thinking, but we're not actually inviting public comment.
No, this is simply an explanation of the recommendation, which will be available to people for review prior to public comment.
Right.
I shouldn't say public comment, public hearing.
Right. Right. So now my question is, what mechanics do we have to go through in order to invoke the public hearing?
David?
Yes, Dave?
I just wondering, is there any reason why we would not have the public hearing on the 19th of January?
The only thing I can think of is if we're not ready for it.
But
We have the
But if you-
15th of December and basically the 12th of January to prepare if we have to.
Well-
If there's something that's spilling over and we can't do that on the 19th, that's the only reason. We would have to know 4 weeks in advance in order to properly notice it. And that's why I was thinking of noticing it next week if we're meeting next week, because that's 4 weeks in advance, actually 5 weeks in advance.
okay. I mean, so when this goes out, however it goes out, the county, however this goes out, there will be some thing to explain that a public hearing will be happening, the date for the public hearing will be forthcoming.
Nancy's not back there, I don't think.
Yeah, because normally
Donovan,
what
do you know?
happens.
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, normally what happens
Not fair
is
to ask the new guy.
you provide the public both pieces of information at the same time. Doesn't always happen that way. You don't have to
Yeah.
do it that way. Is that, and it goes, depending on how they do it, goes on the county website and all these other places, in the paper and all that, depending on what it is. So it may be more beneficial to be able to tell the people the 19th. And I understand your concern, which is a legitimate concern. There may be other things that will prevent us from doing that. But maybe would we know better later on this evening?
That was
Yeah.
basically what I was
And
looking
then-
at.
and then
Sometime
maybe-
tonight, we'll know whether we're having problems and
Yeah.
we're going to have to meet the 15th, the 12th, or things are going smoothly and we should be able to lock in the 19th.
But to Kurt's point, can we readdress that later tonight then, just to?
That's fine, I
Yeah.
didn't want it to slide and we missed some.
I think it would be appropriate to have a motion to have a public hearing. I mean, because that way, it basically is a formal process, which it is.
Well, I don't know that we need a motion and a vote because
Yeah.
basically we've already approved the 19th provisionally, and all we have to do now is confirm it.
And I don't know, Dave, I really don't. I just know in one part of the world, you do, but in this part of the world, we may not. That's, again, not everything's the same.
As long as we do this properly noticed, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Which is 4 weeks.
Right.
And if it's tonight, we're 6 weeks. If it's next week, we're 5. So we're properly noticed, I believe.
Okay.
Unless somebody is aware of something I'm missing on that. I'd also like to mention, it has been brought to our attention that we have not debated all the various forms of government. Now, for my own self, I read all the statutes. I looked at what the options were, all the options, including the charter government. As we listened to people coming in and testifying, I was constantly comparing all the options, not just the commission manager form. I was looking at that myself, and I've talked to a couple of people who have said that they were doing the same thing. Does anyone feel that there is a need for us to discuss, deliberate, the alternate forms of government other than the commission manager? The executive commission, the 5-member commission, the 3-member commission, 5-member commission, 7-member commission, merge with another county or the charter form. Does anyone feel that we have missed something that they would like to deliberate the other forms of government? I know this is not an action item. I'm doing a poll right now to see whether we need to put something on a future agenda.
No.
I get shaking heads. I don't
No,
get anybody who looks like they want it. Yes, Brian?
Candidly, I thought that we would go through that as this process unfolded. It didn't happen that way, and the agenda kind of steered us to the place we are now, and I would have appreciated the fuller debate. However, the way I view it is that those other forms could be discussed in the context of contrasting with what the recommendation is as we go through pros and cons. Like, that could be brought up, for instance, if you did this, the implication of that relative to what your recommendation is thus. And so I thought those kinds of remarks could be brought up as we were going through the pros and cons, just to lay that out. It's not as perhaps deliberative as taking each one, but I think that would be the way that at least I've reconciled in my mind how I could just be satisfied that I went through these other forms and had some remark about them.
I'm absolutely open to any discussion of the other forms as we're going through this. Anything else before we move on? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the analysis of the strengths and weaknesses. This was a project that was put together based upon a recommendation by Kurt Anderson. Kurt managed the project for us. We are prepared, I believe, Kurt, we made a recommendation last week that people be prepared to review these and discuss whether they were facts. I want to say fact or fiction. That isn't exactly the way you phrased it. Facts, need further information, opinion. So.
Fact needs substantiation, does not change since the distinction between current and recommend form of government and unknown, that like cost, we don't know what it's going to be, higher or lower. So those are the 4 categories that were included in the minutes.
Okay. With that, let's start going. Do we want to do a round robin so everyone gets a chance to speak, or do we feel that that's not necessary on this subject? I don't want just one person dominating the whole thing. I want everybody to get a chance to speak if they feel they need to.
Could I suggest that we go through first and identify which items people feel are statutory facts, so that I don't think those really need much further discussion if we agree that it is a statutory fact. For instance, the manager is going to be the county budget officer. I just pick one randomly. It's documented in statute. If we agree to it, fine, we don't need to discuss it further. The other categories may need more conversation and discussion. That way we can at least weed it down to the things that need discussion as opposed to the ones that don't.
Sounds reasonable?
It might be faster that way, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Who would like to take the lead and identify fact from fiction?
It was started with the alternate form of government.
Yeah. So for instance, I'll take an example here. The statement of redraw districts is necessary. That, I believe, is a statutory fact.
And which one is
This is starting with alternate weaknesses. That was the first page.
Sorry,
Sorry, that's number 15.
Actually, I think it's not the first page. I think they just, when they put it through the machine, they had it stapled wrong.
The
Well,
email that
we
came
did.
out with the Word document did have it on the first page, but
Okay, that kind of doesn't make sense.
I know, it was kind of,
Great.
I agree, but
Okay, got it.
it was just the order, I think, that
Alright,
she
so I'll
transcribed the
flip.
flip charts.
We can No.
It doesn't matter as long as we all know which pages we're
As long
on.
as I know what page people are on. Sure.
So it's line 15. I switched the bullets to numbers on a reference copy for myself. So it's near the fourth one from the bottom of that section. Redraw the districts. Do people agree that that's a
Okay.
statutory fact?
So we have two. The first one is the county manager in charge of the budget development is one fact, and this is another fact. Redraw the districts.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I make a comment on that? You know,
Well, it's just a
It's
fact.
listed on the weaknesses.
I don't know, I will discuss whether they're weaknesses or strengths.
Yeah.
That is a point we do need
These are
discussion
items
on.
that
So
we
that's why
are
I'm not.
determining, these are facts.
Yeah, I skipped over that one because I thought it needed discussion. I didn't consider that, well, anyway. Redrawing the districts, I don't know if you consider that a weakness or a strength either.
I don't
So
either, I don't consider that.
But it's a
weakness.
fact, so.
it is a fact.
Right now, we're just determining fact from fiction, fact from fantasy.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to continue to go down, so we've got second bullet, which you have as number 2, county manager in charge of budget development, that's a fact. Okay, then where's your next fact?
Redraw the district.
The redraw the districts,
Okay,
and 17, that you need to convince 3 of the 5 for on an issue, were the ones that I considered to be facts in this section.
I had another one I thought was a fact, that there's no guarantee of continuity with the county manager. I'm not saying it is.
That's true, but I didn't consider it substantiated in statute. That was the
Yeah.
only reason I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're making it 100%.
The hiring of the
Yeah.
qualified
Incontrovertible
manager,
is what I was looking for, yeah.
Got it.
requirement to hire a county manager would be a fact.
That is a fact, yes.
Second item on.
so
the list.
hiring of qualified,
It's, the qualified is the
Hiring
conditional
of the
there,
county-
because
of county
a
manager.
number of these, I said, hey, this is a mixture. It's
Yeah.
like, we're making 3 statements in one, and they span 3 different categories in this one statement.
well,
And
I'm,
so-
I'm going to put that as a fact and put like a little circle around qualified, meaning,
Yeah, that works.
so we have to hire a manager.
We have to hire a county manager, whether qualified or not is
Yeah.
up in the air.
Correct.
So we've got four facts listed on alternate form of government weaknesses, right? Do we all agree?
Did anyone have any others?
I'm thinking about the no guarantee of continuity. There are no guarantees in life. I mean, we could be struck by an asteroid while we're sitting here tonight, and it could wipe us out, but
So that's not a fact.
when you say no guarantee of continuity with county manager, I believe the point of that was that the county manager could be terminated because he serves at the pleasure of the Board of Commissioners. I believe there are some ways of improving the possibility of continuity. We heard a recommendation from Nancy Jones, and I believe Nancy Pluffle repeated it, that what they did when they hired, I believe it was the HR director, they did a hiring committee. And the suggestion was that for all senior level positions, a hiring committee be used. If that hiring committee consists of all of the elected officials or their representatives, it would be more difficult for a minor change in the board to result in the termination of of a manager.
Hiring committee hires, they don't fire.
Hiring committee hires, but they don't actually hire, they recommend. But if that's the case, if you come in and say, I'm going to terminate the person you like, that's not going to sit well for future negotiations. Can they still come in and terminate them? Yes. There's no question of that. They serve at the pleasure of the county commissioners.
The other issue, oh, sorry, Dave,
It
go
would
ahead.
be more difficult politically, shall we say, to terminate a person who had the support of all 6 row officials.
I think it's, yeah.
Yeah, we're just trying to do, right. I agree, Brian, so we're off the track already.
Well, okay, so saying there's no guarantee of continuity, I think is factual because it's an at-will state. Is that okay with people?
As it's
That
stated,
we're-
there's no guarantee of continuity.
It is a fact.
That's like life.
Okay,
You're saying
all right.
there's no guarantee of-
I also had, and maybe I misunderstood the person, on the bottom, the third from the bottom, that I thought this meant 4-year cycle for any change. I thought that was referring to if whatever we recommend, isn't there a minimum time limit?
Yes, that is,
So
that is also a fact, yeah.
That is also
Yeah.
a fact I have.
They cannot change the form for 4
Yeah,
years.
4 years, so
Yep.
that's a fact, that's what I have.
The other one that I had here is the hiring and firing of county employees, at least within the purview of the VOCC, and the development of advisory boards and committees shifts to the county manager. Somebody was citing that aspect out of the statute last week, I think.
I have that as.
So, yes.
Yeah, number 8, or the next one, yeah.
As long as people understand that county employees doesn't mean anything to do with the other role, the role
Just the ones
officials.
under
Yeah,
the VOCC, yeah.
Just the 17
Yeah.
departments, yes.
Right.
Aren't you sweet?
And I guess it's debatable, the one that says the county manager is not accountable to the voters.
I had that as a fact also.
Yeah,
I had that as a fact also, because it is true.
it's true. They're accountable to the board, but not to the voters.
Can we go back to the county manager in charge of budget development? I think the terminology there could be better because he doesn't, or she, wouldn't develop the budget. They compile all the information.
Right.
And then
Coordination.
submit it, correct. So they're not developing the budget, they're gathering all
So
that
basically,
information.
that's not a fact then, we have to strike that one.
We change the rule.
Well, but right now, we're going through and deciding if it fits in one of 4 categories. Then when we're left with what we have, then I think we're gonna be wordsmithing. And if we wordsmith them as we go along, we're changing things from fact to needs, we're changing among categories. So I think we're gonna get really confused.
I think, Tamara, to your point, I believe the term budget development does come from section 703 about the
Says-
duties of the county budget officer.
Prepare and submit,
An
Okay.
annual
and
budget.
compiles.
Okay.
Compiles all the information, it does not say develop. Not that I have right
Okay,
now.
fair enough.
Yeah, I'd have to look back at the statute, but it's a suggested budget. I think that's the terminology from the statute. When you look at chapter 16, title 31.
So maybe we put an asterisk on it to clarify the wording.
Yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
rather than an asterisk, we can make a modification right here now. Change development to compilation.
Sure,
or
that works.
Compilation.
or a
How about
suggested budget.
coordination? Was it compilation?
Budget
I believe
coordination.
he's actually compiling the budget. I don't think he's necessarily just coordinating.
Correct.
I believe the budget officer compiles the budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
And presumably, that person would have a bit more directive role when it comes to the 17 departments under the commissioners, because they report to that person, so
Right.
that person would be assembling the budget or developing it for the 17 departments and compiling from the other electeds.
Is it okay that on the one about the hiring and firing of county employees, I put a paren, just the 17 departments?
Yes, that seems fair.
Something like that.
Yep.
So can I put that in there? What I'm gonna try to do is write all this up and then put it part of the minutes of what we are agreeing to. I want to make sure I got it correct.
That's a good idea.
Sounds like a good idea.
That
Yes,
email.
Phil?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. We're going through what we're calling the weaknesses, distinguishing what we believe are facts. Are we saying factually those are weaknesses, or they're just facts of the form of government?
Facts of the form of government,
So whether the weakness is strength, we're not even considering, we're just saying that is,
correct.
For example, I don't think that redrawing the districts is a weakness. We have to redraw the districts periodically anyway. I don't necessarily see it as being a weakness that we have to redraw it for this.
Yeah, we have to figure out whether we consider it a weakness or a strength later.
No.
But if we can at least get the facts clear and out of the way, then we can.
got it, thank you.
One of the listed items here is
Just a
open
summary.
meeting law concerns. It is a fact we must comply with open meeting laws regardless.
I believe this was a summation of the concerns that changing to 5 would increase the risk of violating open meeting law or lead to potential
I don't think that's a
subversion.
fact, though.
No.
No, I agree, it's not a fact. I'm not calling it a fact.
So we do have to comply with open meeting laws. If we're saying that it increases the risk, then it's an opinion.
Yeah, we're not there yet, we're just on facts.
So that, but I'm saying, it is a fact that we have to continue to comply with open meeting laws.
Yes, that is a fact, but the change in the form of government doesn't have anything to do with compliance with open meeting laws. It has to do with a perceived risk. I think when the people were documenting this, they were pointing out that they viewed a higher risk of violating open meeting law, which still has to be complied with, by going to 5, compared to staying with 3, for example.
Okay, I'll reserve it, I'll debate that one with you.
Okay, so any other facts? I have county manager in charge of the budget, hiring a qualified county manager, no guarantee of continuity with county manager, hiring and firing of county employees of 17 departments is a fact, county manager not accountable to voters, redraw districts, 4-year cycle for any change, citizens must convince 3 of their issues. Those are the facts, as we have it right now. And to Phil's point, it's not fact that it's a weakness, it's just a fact that those are true statements. Yet we'll figure out weaknesses and strengths later.
Okay, do we want to move on facts under other subjects, or do we want to move on with this one and
I'd say let's
Do other
go through facts
classifications.
across the board first.
facts across the board? Since we're with alternate form weaknesses, alternate form strengths,
Yep, sounds good.
okay, go for it.
Before you move on to that, did you capture that one that says potentially increased cost if no change from full-time to part-time board of commissioners? Was that not captured as fact?
I don't consider that a statutory fact.
Okay. You were looking for just statutory facts. Okay.
I'm looking for, yeah.
Okay,
I
so you
think
could
that's
just reduce it
one
to
that needs substantiation or debate or something, clarification.
That's fine.
Yeah, unfortunately, the change in cost is not something that is a direct result of the change of form. It's a result of the decision made by the county commissioners.
So I just needed a clarification about, we were talking about statutory fact.
So the first one I came up with under alternate forms of strengths was the 5th line down. The county manager offloads the Board of Commissioners' administrative duties.
Okay,
And then like 4 lines further down, it allows for subcommittees.
it does.
Let's see, then the quorum of 3 versus 2 allows for more collaboration. More is, it allows some collaboration, which is more than what you get now. Outside of a meeting. I believe that was the point of the line.
But that's not, is that in the statute? You're talking statutory.
Well, it doesn't say allows for more collaboration,
No.
but
The statute doesn't say you can collaborate, but it does allow for 2 people to get together and talk, which you can't do with only 3. So I viewed that as, the statute defines quorum,
Yeah,
And with 5, then you can have a non-quorum meeting between any 2 of them. So I think this follows from statute.
I think as Tamara pointed out, though, this isn't actually statutory in and of itself. It's a matter of what kind of implementation the county commissioners do. This is not a statutory requirement.
Okay.
And you kind of already have that with the allows for subcommittees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of repetitious with allows for subcommittees, frankly, but, and there were a couple that were duplicate that I flagged later on, but the 11th line that says can select a longer commission term, I think that's moot at this point, because when we were doing this exercise, we hadn't decided to stick with the 4-2 rotation. Now that we've decided on it, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
What do we want to do with it?
I would
I
just
would
strike
say
it out.
strike that one
Strike
at
it,
this
okay.
point.
Yeah, I agree.
And people have other things that they felt were statutory facts in the strengths? David, you're debating something.
It's not statutory, but it's not it depends, it's not a fact. I mean, it's about the more public access to the BOCC. It depends on how you, there are 5 people, so.
It depends on how it's implemented.
Yeah, that's why I have it fact here, but I rethought it myself. I didn't know, and this is, it probably doesn't work, strategic planning will part of the job. I assume that meant the whose job? Is that the county commissioner's job, or is that?
Well,
The commissioners are responsible for policy, strategic
Okay.
planning.
But that's not a fact, it
The
only.
general strategic
Yeah.
plan would be the county commissioners. Implementation of it would be the administrators.
Okay,
and it depends on how they go about doing things. I
They
mean,
wanna
there
do
were a
it.
couple of these that I flagged. It's like, well, yeah, maybe, but it depends on job description they write for the county
well,
manager.
and I also wrote down, it depends on the quality of the people in the job
Yes,
and their ability to do those things.
yep.
So you're pondering whether strategic planning will be part of the job as a fact or not? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was. I believed it was part of the job, whether they do it well. If we implement a county,
Right, it's part of the job, you just might not do it well.
right,
Or
that's
might
why I
not do
didn't
it
know
well.
it was a fact.
It is a fact insofar as if you believe the words in the statute to mean what they say, which is the 31, section 31-5303 sub 3 says, the job of the commission manager is to furnish the board with information concerning the operation of county departments, board or commissions as necessary for the board to exercise its powers or as requested by the board and submit any other reports requested by the board. I kind of put that strategic planning as part of the job.
I
Falls out of
considered that as a plausible interpretation, but it's
Yeah.
an interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, when you put that third one and then prepare and submit the annual budget, it's the county budget officer, you're right, it's interpretation. I didn't
Well,
see
actually,
it.
I think Dave is right. It's part of the job. Whether they do it or do it well is another matter. People who are in executive positions don't always do their jobs.
Well, but you could also have the county commission, could draft a job description that required them to submit all of those reports, but had no call to have strategic foresight in it.
Then they're simply, it's part of the commissioner's job to do strategic planning.
And
If
it is
they
today,
choose not
too.
to do it, they're simply not doing their jobs.
Right.
So the fact that it's part of the job, not of the administrator, not of the county manager, but of the county commissioners, is a fact. Whether they do the job or not is another matter.
And to that point, then there's no difference between the current form and the alternate form in that regard.
I agree.
That may belong there.
So we're striking it because it's
Well, we haven't
Part of
gone to the items that there's no difference. Many of these items, there's no difference.
Yeah, we
This
can
is one
circle,
more that
we'll
there'll be
circle
no
back on the
difference.
next pass and get the no difference ones out of the picture.
So right now we have just two facts. County manager offloads administrative duties and allows for subcommittees, and we struck can select a longer commissioner's term,
Yeah.
commission term.
I think item 3 is a fact.
What's the other one?
Five Board of County Commission increases representation.
Where's that?
I think that's opinion
That's an
myself.
opinion.
See, that's,
1, 2, 3.
I know.
5. There's 5 it has to be a fact, I think.
All the commissioners represent all of the people in the county.
But they run from a district just the same, or they designated district.
They have to
So
live, it's an oddity, they have to live in a district, but the election is at large.
Right.
So they are elected by the entire county,
Right. But
yeah.
under a 5-member system, one theoretically would represent about 36,000 people as opposed to 60,000 people.
But if they're doing it half-time, then that's less representation on a per-hour basis.
I disagree with that one, but
Now we're getting into if 80% of their job is administrative, they're probably
Yes.
doing more in that 20%.
Yes.
So
I
again,
know,
this
I
is
ran that
where,
calculation too.
yeah,
That's why I say it's opinion.
yeah. So we only have 2.
we have two in the.
Two in that item, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we move to current form, weaknesses or strengths first, who wants to go?
Current weaknesses, just in the same
This is first.
kind of order. Anybody have anything there?
Well, there certainly is a lack of professionally trained management. We're electing people, they're not professionally trained. I would say that is a fact.
How are they, so explain that
Our
one to me,
commissioners
because I
are
mean, you
not
could elect
professionally
people.
trained.
But
Yeah,
they're
but
still
when
not
you
gonna be
elect them,
professionally
you
trained.
do it based on their credentials, so they may have those professional credentials.
It's
As
possible.
a- And once they're elected, the taxpayers pay for these folks to go off and get training. That's another thing that I think is overlooked often is, my observation of government is when somebody's not at their desk, it's always, I'm away at training. And, when county commissioners come in, I'm sure they go through training,
They do.
about how government runs. Just like freshmen in Congress, US Congress, they get the same thing. They get a lot of training. So professionally, are they an accountant? A lawyer or whatever? I don't know. But
I don't think any of the 9 elected officials we have right now have a background in management, are professionally trained in management. We have someone who is professionally trained in law enforcement as a sheriff. We have a professionally trained lawyer, but we don't have people who are professionally trained managers. And this says professionally trained management.
Well, I agree with you as to the validity of the point, Dave. I don't think that it's statutorily defined. I mean, I agree that it's true, but I don't think that it's a fact in the sense of being a requisite part of statute. And I think that's what Brian was trying to point out, that we could elect a professionally trained manager. It isn't verboten according to statute, for example.
I actually see your point now. I kind of was missing a part of it, but there's perhaps not somebody who's like a professionally trained manager who's like, maybe they are in some of the elected positions or something, but maybe not. You're just saying there's not some designated professionally trained manager that's part of the government.
Right.
And I don't know if that's true or not. I just don't.
I think, and in a relative basis, when you've got a commission manager form where you have presumably a professionally trained manager that's part of the package versus one where it's happenstance, if you like, then it's very likely that we're lower on the quantity of professionally trained management in the current form, but I don't think that it is necessarily statutorily mandated differential.
Okay, I'll agree that it's not statutory.
What about it's not worded correctly, but what about lack of distinction between administrative and legislative function? I think it's important to note that those two functions reside in an individual. 3 individuals.
That
agree.
actually is statutory.
That one I agree. Agreed.
Yeah.
That is
So
statutory, yes,
again,
ma'am.
that might not that might not be the best wording, but, okay.
I believe under statute, the two functions are combined rather than
Yeah.
lack of distinction, but it's the same thing.
Okay, so
And I also found the, outside of an open meeting, there is no collaboration, or at least no legal collaboration, to be a fact here. It's about in the middle, like line 5.
Actually, we do have serial meetings, we've heard that in our testimony, where someone goes to Commissioner A to make a pitch, goes to Commissioner B to make a pitch, goes to Commissioner C to make a pitch, then comes to the meeting, and we don't know whether the 4 pitches are the same.
I don't consider that collaboration, though.
It's the same kind of serial meeting that we're talking about having with the 5.
It's a serial meeting, but it's not like collaboration between the commissioners, where you can have a subcommittee who is focused on some topic. And that, I was viewing this statement as kind of the counterpoint to the more, the opportunity for more either subcommittees or collaboration under the strengths of the alternate form. So alternate form allows subcommittees, allows collaboration between the commissioners. Current form does not, outside of an open meeting.
Okay.
So we only have 2 facts on this section.
and they are.
Outside of open meeting, there's no collaboration and lack of distinction between administrative and legislative function.
Okay, anyone want to lead off with facts that they've perceived in the strengths of the current form?
Well, familiar is one. It's not statutory.
All right, well, I mean, historically, we could say that it's familiar because it's been around for a lot longer. Right.
So is that okay?
Sure.
Well, you do have 100% representation, because you can access each one of them.
But isn't that true with the 5 also?
Yeah,
It would be-
I
it would be a
actually
both.
considered that to
That
be
would
a
be- yeah.
non-differentiated.
That would be
Okay, so
non-differentiated.
we'll come back to that one.
I thought that easier access to the board for citizens' issues, which was a counterpoint to the, you have to convince 3 for your issue. The point was you only have to convince 2 for your issue, was a fact. I mean, just by the
I think that's a
numbers.
matter of policy, whether the commissioners are available to people or not. The 3 that we have may or may not be available, the 5 that we have may or may not be more available.
Okay,
The simple fact that we have only 3 now versus 5, we don't know whether they're going to be full-time or part-time when we have 5.
great.
Our recommendation may be part-time, but they're executives, they set their own hours.
Okay,
I had 2 that are virtually the same, I think, as facts. BOCC can hire assistants, and BOCC has options to increase efficiency. Both of those are facts. They can hire a COO. So I had that as a fact. I don't know if it fits into the categories, but
Which one?
yeah, I think
About
those.
two-thirds, a third,
Yeah,
two-thirds
I
of the
think
way
those
down the
fit, I
page.
mean, because it's in contrast to invoking a statutory change of
Yeah.
government.
yeah, so BOCC can hire assistants, we're saying as a fact.
I don't agree that BOCC has options to increase efficiency. I mean, that's again, how do you define efficiency? How do you define options? What are their, I'll go with they can hire assistants. And maybe by doing that, they can increase their efficiency. But I don't think the second one is out of statute at all. There's nothing that talks about efficiency and options in there, but there is something that indicates that they can hire a CEO.
Yeah, there are several in here that are like full-time commissioner slash CEO. I think that was the same as can hire assistants. I think it was, I'm not sure.
I think that one was more along the lines of they're full-time now, and so they are, and if I recall correctly, the kind of the clustering of topics is they have to be full-time now in order to stay up with stuff.
Yeah.
They may not need to be if they go to 5. I think the hiring someone as opposed to having them mandated by statute allows for less than a 4-year duration, I think is a statutory fact, because that kind of goes along with if we vote for an alternate form, we're stuck with it for 4 years minimum. Whereas if they undertake something that's not statutory, a statutory change in form, they can try it out for a shorter period of time.
So we have 2 then?
Actually, I'm not sure that's a fact, because even with the change in form, they can terminate them at any time.
They can terminate them, but they still have to hire to fill the position. So
They
we're
should.
stuck, we're
They
stuck with the
should.
position.
They should.
Well, statute doesn't really cover what happens if they refuse to hire someone, does it?
No, it doesn't.
So somebody could take them to court. I mean, if you wanted to take them to court for not complying with the statute, you could, hypothetically.
Which would be a rather slow method of
Undoubtedly.
doing it, yes.
But, I mean, at least they would know that they're in violation of law. So the state attorney general could take them to court, I mean, if they wanted.
Executives have never said, I don't care what the law is, I'm gonna do it my way.
So are we agreeing or not agreeing?
Traditionally, back to Andy Jackson.
So what are the strengths now?
Well, I have
No, we're not talking
familiar-
strengths. We're talking
The
facts with it.
factual items under
I'm sorry, the
strengths.
current, the undercurrent strengths.
We have familiar is a fact, familiar is a
Current form.
fact,
And that
and
they can hire
BOCC
assistants.
can hire assistants is a fact, and I don't know if we decided
Yeah.
the next one is also a fact or not a fact.
I view it as a fact that they can do it for less than a 4-year duration. Now, they can do anything if they want to be outside the realm of law. So I don't know that discussing what they would do if they wanted to go outside of statute is constructive. So to say that, yeah, we vote for a change in form and they decide they don't like it after 6 months, they fire the person and don't rehire. Is it really constructive for us to debate that scenario as compared to they hire somebody without a statutory change, without a voted change in form, and then they decide it didn't work out and they fire them and everyone moves along, but they're not in violation of law? I mean, you're basically saying it doesn't matter whether they're violating the statute in a sense, because they don't need to stick with it for 4 years. But I think that would be a stretch.
I guess the fact that we're talking about this so much tells me it's not a fact, because we're not, and chief operation officer, that doesn't say clearly, county manager, so I don't know who put this one in or
Well, we moved away from the
what.
phrase county manager because the commission manager form. And we're looking for a different phrase for the administrative assistant, chief operating officer.
Yeah.
You're talking about
Certified
the,
secretary.
the
whatever you
administrative assist, yeah,
Yes,
okay.
the administrative assistant.
Okay, the appointed
This
administrative assistant.
was like the Ada County model.
Okay, yeah. So it allows for, well,
Well, there's other options though, because the county commissioners can currently appoint any one of the other elected officials to be the administrative head. So it's not just about a chief operation officer. There are other options that would facilitate for less than a 4-year duration beyond the chief operating officer.
True.
While that's
So-
statutorily possible, I think that the workload it wouldn't work. Can you imagine trying to have the sheriff running the administration?
I'm not debating workload, that is statutory, that they have the option to choose, and obviously that person would have to, want to do it, but it's a statutory option that any one of the electeds can become the administrative head.
Which line are we talking about here?
The chief operating officer I'm just saying it doesn't have to be just the chief operation officer allows for less than a 4-year duration. There are actually other options. That are statutory.
I think when we were sketching this out and putting sticky notes on the wall, the idea was that if they were to undertake some sort of administrative adjustments, let's call it that, as opposed to a statutory adjustment to a
Correct.
different form, it allows them more flexibility than being locked into a given form for 4 years.
Yes.
I think that was the intent of this line, remember, we had 10 or 15 sticky
Right,
notes out there
right.
that were kind of boiled down into this statement.
I basically think it shouldn't be considered a fact because we can't even decide what we're talking about, so. Isn't that what we're doing now? That doesn't mean it's not a relevant point in some other category, but it's not a fact.
I think the
Perhaps.
4-year duration part, or the less than 4-year duration part is a fact. We could split this up and say that the 4-year duration is a fact, the other part is at the whim of the board.
We've already taken care of the 4-year cycle in the alternate form weaknesses. So do we need to readdress it here in the same way?
Probably not. I mean, if it's a weakness here, then is it a strength on the other side? So some of them are and some aren't. In this case, I think it's a weakness over here and it's a strength over here. But
So,
I mean, the
just
point
trying
is,
to get to the answer is.
Good luck, Dave.
We have two, familiar and BOCC can hire assistants as the facts.
fair enough.
Okay,
That's all we got agreement on, yes.
okay. So now we're back to the top again to go through another,
Right, let's go through and find the things that are not distinguishers. They're
Okay.
the same between the alternate and the current, and those we can probably just strike off the list entirely, although we may want to document them.
I'm gonna
in
document it
items.
as not a distinction, is what I'll document it.
Yeah. I didn't have any in the weaknesses of the alternate form that I felt were not a distinction.
Alternate.
Open meeting law concerns are not a distinction for me. They still have to comply with open meeting laws, whether there's 3 or 5.
To me, that statement, though, that the concerns around open meeting law had to do with the risk of violating it is higher with 5 than the risk that we have with 3. That even unknowingly, it would be easier for them to accidentally have a serial meeting with 5 than it is for them to have a serial meeting with 3, because they just can't with 3. If you meet with somebody else, you're already in violation, period.
Well, if you're discussing certain subjects, yes.
Anything having to do with policy,
Information,
Yeah.
policy,
Right.
deliberation, yes.
right. Christmas party probably isn't an issue, but yeah, other things are. So that's why I'm saying that this is, as called out as in a weakness area, the concern is the increased risk of inadvertent violation, let's say. If somebody's being malicious, if somebody's intentionally trying to subvert the law, it's a different story. They can do it either way.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree that there's an increased risk. There's a potential, but I'm not sure there's an increased risk.
So basically, you're saying we have 3 county commissioners now, and they all follow the rules 100%. They wouldn't think of talking about anything, picking up the phone, whatever. We don't, I think we don't know.
I'm saying that
I
it
think we
is,
don't know.
it is clearer to them when they're violating it. I mean, assuming that they're well-intentioned.
Mm-hmm.
well, whether they're well-intentioned or not, it's less ambiguous with three. Because if they pick up the phone and have a conversation with one of the other two, it's a violation. Now, if they pick up the phone with five and talk to somebody, and then that person picks up their phone and talks to another one of the five, that first person didn't know that they were in violation.
Again, you could say the same thing when you've got, again, you're,
You can't accidentally have a conversation with somebody else without violating it with
but
three.
we aren't there, we aren't seeing what they do. You are just saying somehow because there's only three, and if two of them walk down the hall, talk about the holiday party, and then mention, it morphs into something else, they're in violation. I think they know that now, or they might see each other at the grocery store or whatever. They know it, so what you're saying, the difference is whether they know they're in violation or if they think they might not be in violation. That is not something we can, I mean, that's happening between two people, and it's
yeah.
happening, and we don't know it, and so I don't understand how that could, at least you'd have to word that differently.
Yeah, I'm not attributing any motives to
Well, that's it,
the
we don't
current
know
or the
motive of-
future, but I don't think it matters. Because I think the very chance that, as you said, whether they know that they're in violation or should know, or whether there is doubt about it, is the distinction here that I think this is trying to raise. That they could be in violation without knowing about it by doing a serial meeting with five.
Okay, you know, I don't care. It's
Well, but
it's just too
can I just
too
add that?
nitpicky,
That I
so
didn't
put it on
understand how
there.
this was an alternate form of, with five commissioners would be a lower concern of open meeting law violations in general. Because two people could talk without a violation.
Yeah, so it's,
So I don't
it
even
just
understand it,
depends.
but I actually believe this doesn't matter what kind of form of government, it depends on the people.
That's what thank you, that's exactly what I was trying to
So
say.
if
I think
You
it's
could have ethical
no
people with
distinction
five or
because
two or three.
it
or-
really,
I think the assumption we're making here is we have three ethical people, but with five, they won't be.
I don't think that's the assumption. I
No.
think we're
No.
saying, I think we're
Yeah.
saying one person can talk to, one commissioner can talk to
striking it.
another, that's okay. But that other commissioner can then talk to another commissioner, and now you have serial,
Right.
open meeting law concerns.
But again,
But
it
they've
goes
been
back
told
to,
they can't do that.
yeah, it goes,
And you can have that right now with the three.
You're projecting into the future, remember, because we're talking about with five.
Right, because
And
one
that's the
can talk
problem.
to
We're
another.
projecting into the future. What's a fact in the future is difficult.
Yeah.
Except that it is a fact that one can talk to another about an issue before them.
Yes.
And so then that one can talk to another.
yeah, but we're not talking about facts, we know it's not a fact. The question is,
Is it different between three and five?
Three and five, and my view was it doesn't matter, 3 or 5, because it depends on the people and what they do.
But it is a fact that one commissioner can talk to another commissioner with five.
Yeah, that is a fact, but this is,
And then that commissioner
Yeah.
can talk to another commissioner.
that's true.
And I think that's what we're talking about.
Right, but it doesn't change today that 2 commissioners can talk and they shouldn't be talking at all.
No, but in this form, you know that you can't do that. In the other form, you can. One
But in
can
the-
talk to another and
In
another can talk to
the
another.
five commissioner, the second commissioner knows he cannot bring that subject up with the third commissioner.
Yeah, it goes back to, do they comply or not comply?
And that, I guess that's the issue.
If you and I are talking about this, and we finish our discussion, and I call Dave up and say, hey, by the way, I know I'm violating open meeting laws.
But is that a fact, though, that you cannot do that? Because that issue came up when we were speaking with Barry McHugh, if you recall. Because, and in fact, we actually had one person at least, maybe more than one, give us information and thought that it was a good idea that they could serially violate the open meeting law. If you recall, that was that was some of the information that we gathered.
I do
And so
remember that.
Yeah, and so I think it's not clear, it was Barry's opinion that that would be an open meeting law violation, but I don't know that it's clear that it in fact is.
Unfortunately, we lost our open meeting law expert when Nancy
Yeah.
Jones retired here. But it's my understanding that that is part of the training that they get when they first are elected. This is the open meeting law, I believe. There was a book that we received ourselves on how to not violate open meeting laws.
Okay.
They get trained on it, and I remember Nancy commenting that two of them will meet in the hallway and start to talk, and if the conversation moves anywhere in directions that's not supposed to happen, they get told, wait a minute, you're potentially going to violate open meeting laws, don't discuss that. It can happen now, it could happen then.
And I
I don't
agree,
know
if-
that there's any more risk of it if they're honest.
And I think Kurt and I are under the assumption that they weren't trained in that they weren't told you can't do that, because I don't know that it was clear.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but if it is clear, then I agree that there is no difference between now and in the future.
Just like,
So what have we decided?
I
I
guess
believe there's no
we're coming-
difference.
We're coming down on no difference
Okay.
on this.
Thank you. So we have, the only thing we've added is not a distinction on this one here.
Yeah.
And that's the only one we've had is not as a distinction.
That's all I ran across. I didn't run across any others in the weaknesses section. Did you have any,
I
Tamara?
did, yeah, the unintended consequences and infrastructure cost. Obviously not talking about salaries on those, but there will be infrastructure costs to change. There's, it costs to redistrict, it costs to, there's no room for them. So the upstairs, they'll have to remodel their boardroom is maybe one of their first choices. That's a cost. And that's the last word I had was it's $450 per square foot for a cost.
Is this a non-difference between the alternate and the current?
No, this is in order, would be the weakness.
We're focused on finding the things that are not differences between the current and alternate right now.
That are not, because they're the same, okay.
Yeah.
No, yeah, this would be a definite
Difference.
difference, yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No,
I
you're
know
fine,
we
you're
got-
right, you're
we
right,
got
no, you're
out
right.
of-
But Tamara, you proposing that that should be a fact?
Yes, actually, going
Yeah.
back to that first
Yeah.
one, because there absolutely will be facts. And hiring the commission manager, I mean, the CDA, city manager makes almost $163,000 a year. So if that's our comp for a city manager, that's a cost.
And this is specifically, I took infrastructure to mean the building and the computers and all that. I wasn't thinking about the salaries.
Yeah, they have to be
But
completely
that
outfitted.
that is,
Well, according to Dina
It is a
Darrow, when
fact.
she was here, we have to invest in infrastructure whether we do this or not.
Right,
So
but
there's not really much of a difference.
Not,
we-
no, not
no,
with the
but
we
board.
don't-
Dina Darrow said that the software we have right now, we heard this
Yeah.
from several
Correct.
others, the software we have right now is inadequate. We must invest in infrastructure and
Right.
software in order to continue to function.
That is
But-
correct,
but the
however,
building itself
the building
is-
itself is
the building
different. The
itself-
The building
computers,
itself
the
is
costs.
the building, we aren't
Fitting,
changing the
fitting
building.
out
No,
We
additional
have to.
space for the manager and the two additional commissioners is gonna be a cost difference between the current and the proposed alternate,
yeah, what I. what I
whatever
think-
that costs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what I found out.
Non-zero is the point.
Yeah,
Depends on how we do it,
might be
yes.
negative.
It'll be non-zero. And we're not saving any money for it. Yeah, that's right. We're not making money out of the deal. So I think it's poorly worded saying unintended consequences, but I think just highlighting that there are infrastructure costs, I think is factual. I don't know that we can call it statutory, but I mean, it's,
It's a fact, I mean, there
Yeah.
will be costs.
Well, there will be,
we don't know how big.
we don't know how big, but if you've ever been to the top floor where these commissioners are, I don't know what broom closet the new commissioners are gonna go into, but it seems like you're gonna need some more space. Maybe they're gonna move off that floor, or just you're gonna put the other two somewhere else. I don't know. Maybe that takes care of your public meeting violation law problem and put them in a broom closet. But you need two computers, two cell phones, you need two desks. You gotta build two more of those things in this room so they can sit up there and, you know, those
Well,
seem like nominal costs, right?
Okay.
But, I mean, those I look at, I don't know if you call those capital or infrastructure. I don't know if there's a distinction, you know?
We were just,
like-
we were
Minor
calling it
capital equipment.
infrastructure in terms of fitting out what they need to
You've
function.
infrastructure, you're thinking like the payroll systems and stuff like that, but I
Well,
was
and
thinking more like,
Computer systems are also infrastructure. Computer
I-
hardware, computer software are also infrastructure. And we've been told that the big infrastructure changes have to happen anyway. If we have to put another chair up here, that's fairly cheap. If we have to buy a major computer system, hardware and software, that's gonna dwarf anything that we're going to do by increasing the number of commissioners.
I think we probably, when we get to the cost issue, we probably have to separate different types of costs, because you're correct about the system itself. Usually adding one more user is not gonna do a lot. I took this at a very limited approach, which I thought it was the building. And I found out that even the new building that they are planning on build only has room for 3 commissioners. So, they would have to retrofit the new building even to get there. So maybe when we get the costs all the way down, we should probably come up with the categories.
Yeah, I
And
think that's
some
fair.
will be absorbed costs, some will be actually incremental costs, and and this may be an unknown thing right now until we really break it down.
It's my understanding that we have a budget, and that budget is based on the revenue coming in, and we can't do much above that. So what you find is that you can live within your means, and you can make adjustments if you need to. So I think for us to sit here and try to figure out how they would handle that is probably, I mean, we could go on for days. I see that it's an issue. I don't deny that it's an issue. It could be done poorly. It could be done extremely well. None of us can guarantee that. We don't know who's going to run in the next election. We don't know what they're going to vote for. We don't know anything. So what we're looking at now is what is the distinction between the current system and a future system? And there's the possibility, if you want to talk about it, that it can actually run much better, and expenses can be handled better because you've got somebody who actually can assess the budget items that are coming up. What you may not know, and I'm sure Dina knows, is that the state of Idaho has a new system called Luma. It's an enterprise reporting system. They have implemented it. They've started with purchasing. They're moving it out. There are systems that need to be considered that ultimately might make things more efficient. The state of Idaho is doing it. I don't know why the state of Idaho doesn't share some of that information. Maybe they do. But we're talking a whole world that the 9 of us sitting here cannot even begin to get into. I would hope that whoever gets in these jobs, be it the commissioners, the manager, or whomever, would pull together, analyze some of this stuff, tap resources in the state, and figure it out. But I don't think it's our place to figure it out. We know that it has to be dealt with. So I totally agree. It's an issue to be dealt with, but it's not an issue for us to deal with, nor is it an issue for us to resolve.
Agreed.
And in management, as people have started to work from home over the last decade, it's become very common for companies to provide basically a desk, a computer, and it is not your desk, it is not your computer, it is not your office. You sign up for a desk, for an office for a period of time. When you're out, somebody else comes in and takes that same desk and office. They have found significant savings in not having as much infrastructure when people come in and work from home and work in the office 3 days a week or 1 day a week. So we may be looking at infrastructure costs. Depending on how they implement it, we may be looking at continuing the same infrastructure. They may be able to work in 3 offices.
So,
They're still gonna need computers and cell phones at a minimum.
well, I think we agreed that it's not a fact.
But it's not statutory. I think that it's plausible or to be expected.
Needs
I mean,
substantiation. But
wouldn't even go quite
I'm
that
just trying to
far.
move on.
I think it's an unknown.
Yeah.
Unknown.
It's not an unknown.
The amount, the quantity is unknown, but I think like Kristen was saying, that it's beyond our scope to figure it out. We don't need to figure it out, we just can call it out as a difference.
No, we don't have to put a number to it, but I think it's a taxpayer. If there's more commissioners, that's a taxpayer cost. If they're updating the computer system, that's a general fund cost. There are differences on how those would be paid.
Still comes out of the taxpayer's
It still
pocket.
comes out of the taxpayers, but it's not an ongoing taxpayer cost. A
Right.
county commissioner and their salaries, their benefits, their memberships to organizations, insurance, workers' comp. It's not just a computer and a desk and a phone. It's much larger than that. It's thousands of of dollars per commissioner to completely outfit them.
Well,
That will have to
unless we
happen.
cut them back to $1,000 a month
Well, we
and no
can't do that.
benefits.
That's
and-
not our,
I know,
you
I
know,
know,
that's
I know.
not our
Well,
purview,
but
so.
neither is paying them $95,000 a year our choice.
Right.
But that's why I said I'm not talking
Choice
about
how
their
much money they
salaries.
make, and it's something that they have to choose.
Correct.
Therefore, it's an unknown because
Their
we don't know
salary
what
is
they're
an
going to do.
unknown. But the
Right.
other infrastructure costs absolutely will happen by adding to commissioners.
No,
Yes.
business has shown that you do not have to have a desk for every person who's not there. You have a desk for every.
Well, you're making an
you share
assumption that
desks.
they're gonna do that, Dave.
Yes, and that's an unknown.
No, I talked to the different offices. This is not coming from me in my opinion. I called the clerk's office, I called the coroner's office, I called the treasurer's office. I got it from their perspectives and what they're going through and what they're having to deal with and putting that out. This is not an unknown. This is from their positions,
How
from their
does the clerk's
offices.
office determine what cost exists in adding 2 more commissioners?
Because they are the ones that put together all of the insurance. They know about the computers, the phones, the memberships like Tenego,
And the
the life
insurance and
insurance
the
and all of
pay is
that.
something to be determined by the county commissioners, not by us, not
And
by
I'm
the
not
clerk's
saying
office.
that, I'm just saying that there are costs that will occur by adding commissioners. What those costs are, I don't know, I don't have
Therefore, it
that.
is an unknown.
That a cost exists is not unknown.
Yes,
And I
it
think-
is.
No, it's not. What the cost is unknown.
If you want to
But
say,
that a
if
cost
you want to say we're
exists.
going to have to give them phones, yes. If you're going to say we're going to have to give them offices, no.
We're not saying that we have to
I'm
give
not
them
saying
offices.
either.
We're
I'm just
we're
saying that there are
there
costs
will be-
involved.
There will be
Tamara is
costs.
saying there are costs. I'm saying the costs that are guaranteed are insignificant.
Oh, you
Okay,
can
so-
take that
okay,
up with
so
the
that's a-
treasurer
that's
and
a
the
different
clerk.
thing.
I think,
That's
I
it,
think,
yeah.
I think
That's-
we're
that's a
getting
different
away
statement.
from, I think we're getting away from what we're trying to do
Yeah,
tonight.
can we circle back to identifying the things that are not
Right, I mean, I
distinguishers
think we-
between?
Can you not say circle back? It kind of makes me think of Jen Psaki, and I
Right.
just, I have a, like a,
Okay, so
just
the other,
teasing you.
we will come back to the infrastructure costs when we talk about the other costs that are embedded in this document, and we will decide how to handle costs.
Right.
okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So on this,
Yeah, we're
on
going down
these-
a rabbit
this-
hole.
the alternate form of government weaknesses, there is no additions to that for, oh, there's one that's not a distinction, and that's open meeting law concerns, right?
Right.
Okay. And now we're on alternate form strengths,
Yes.
and there's nothing there.
I actually viewed the statement of 5 Board of Commissioners increases representation to be non-distinctive because it's still 100% representation regardless of the number. Unless, and this was my own personal comment, unless the county commissioners become focused on district level gamesmanship.
Which we have no way of.
Which we have no way of predicting but barring that, there's still 100% representation, no matter how many there are,
Yeah,
even if we had 51 of them.
It's sort of like it's how you define representation.
Yeah.
So I think that this is going to be a hard one to agree, because what I wrote on my notes was, it's actually a fact, if you assume that representation is a ratio-driven thing.
So,
If you do, then it is a fact that 5 is more representation than 3. If you assume that they are representing everybody, then 1, 3, 5, or 7 doesn't change representation.
right.
So I didn't know what to do with that.
How about marking it down for it needs clarification?
We'll get to that category soon.
I know, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to represent what
It
you
needs
were.
substantiation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are gonna be the ones, when we write the report, we'll have to discuss.
Yep.
How to do it.
Yep.
All right, so any others on the strengths? We have none so far for,
Let's see, I did find, while we're in the strengths of the alternate form, I did find one that I thought was a duplicate, near the bottom, where it says business continuity with the county manager. To me, that was a duplicate for improved
Okay, yeah.
continuity across elections, which is 2 lines above it.
Business continuity with county manager was mine, and that kind of came from my presentation. Basically, business continuity, I mean business continuity planning. When you have a professional manager, you have to be prepared if systems go down, if, you might recall, yeah,
okay,
yeah, so
okay.
that's what that means, business content, like you can keep the business going, like with COVID, how we kind of hit, like we got slapped in the face here, and you really couldn't get a lot of services for a while, and then people rallied and they figured a way around it, but there were lines and you had to use queue lists and whatever.
Okay.
There should be that kind of a system in place ahead of time, so you flip the switch and go, okay, we're going to our plan now. That we don't have, and you won't probably ever have that unless you have a professional manager, because people don't think about that.
Would it be fair then to amend this statement to say business continuity planning with the county manager? Because I think that's really,
That's
you're
fine.
trying to get across.
But I don't know that has anything.
and then I say it's not a duplicate. I mean, if, with that
Okay.
clarification, I would say it's not a duplicate of the
Okay.
continuity across elections.
I
Actually, I
don't,
think that one's similar to the can select a longer commissioner term. I think that would have greater continuity if we had 4-year terms across the elections.
I'm not sure what people were
Does anybody
trying to get
remember who
across
was
there.
putting this one in? What the intention was on this item?
The
Oh,
no,
the other
the
one.
continuity across elections. We'll come back to it, if that's,
Planning to it.
But I have a feeling maybe Bob's out there.
no, he was on a plane. He didn't have a chance to dial in.
Across elections, I think it was in terms of the manager, is this kind of fixture that sticks around.
yeah.
I thought that was something Phil was advocating, but maybe not.
It was not mine, but I think, Brian, you're right. It was to improve continuity, that if commissioners change, there's still a administrative focus that continues on by the manager being there, even though the commissioners change.
Okay, so this wasn't
And,
trying to move
it's not
toward
one of
4-year
mine.
terms.
Like I say, it wasn't one of mine, but I'm just kind of reading between the lines too.
That's what it was. I recall. I didn't put it in.
Okay. No, but we'll insert planning into that one.
And then we have the weaknesses of the current form, the next one.
Yeah, I had that the direction of the board can change in every election. I think that's a not distinction between the current and the alternate form, because with the alternate form, it can change at every election as well.
Yeah.
Not a distinction.
Yeah.
Any others, not a distinction?
I didn't have anything else in that section.
I didn't either.
I hope you're getting these down, Dave. I started, but, yeah, I know, thank goodness.
What I'm gonna do is, it'll be part of the minutes, and obviously, when you review the minutes, if I
Yeah.
mistype something, we can correct it.
It's hard, I give you
Yeah.
credit for keeping track of this.
It is 7 PM. Before we start the current forms of government strengths, do we want to take the break?
I think maybe we can get through the non-differentiations
Yeah.
and then take the break.
Yeah, sounds
If
good.
that's agreeable?
I had two in this section that I considered non-differentiating, but one of them is the 100% representation, and I think we've already talked a little bit about that in the 5 versus 3 question.
Where are you, Kurt? I'm sorry.
Strengths,
halfway down.
current form strengths, halfway down, roughly.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is the flip side of the 5 gives you better representation, and I think this was the argument that 3 is 100% also. So
No difference.
it's either no difference or it depends on the definition of representation.
First item, checks and balances, there's no change, we still have the
Yeah,
same
I
silos.
agree, I was gonna say that one too. We still, you have checks and balance, the checks and balances were primarily the row, versus the commissioners.
Yeah, that was, I had noted it to ask for clarification if it was on the electeds versus the
Yeah.
board, or if
Yeah.
this was on the 5 versus 3.
I don't know, it wasn't mine.
Well,
so-
I mean, this is the current form strength, and when you compare this with the future form, there's no change in the silos.
Correct. Well, unless somebody was making the case that 3 provides better checks and balances than 5. I didn't know.
I don't see anybody jumping out for that one, so
Okay,
Okay,
not
yeah.
a distinction.
right. The other one that I had come up
Continuity of
with,
experience within the BOCC, that's not changing.
not,
We still have one person going 4 years terms and everyone else going 2-year terms.
fair enough.
And,
Yep.
and they could be reelected and
Yep.
whatever, yep.
They can be reelected now, they can be reelected then. That doesn't change.
Correct. The other one I had come up with was the next to the last one, which says the board sets goals and policies on a countywide basis. They do that in both forms.
Yeah. What about easier access to BLCC for citizens issue? Didn't we talk about the fact that with the administrative stuff gone and they're focusing on issues and policy, it might actually be, and it depends on who's in the position. You might have 3 commissioners who really don't have office hours because they don't want to hear from people, or you might have, and you might have 5 that do, and you'd get more out of that. So I don't know if there's a distinction one with the other.
Yeah,
Depends on the
we
people.
touched on it when we were talking about whether it's a fact or not.
Yeah.
I think it still is something that we need to clarify or discuss or something.
Well, you were making the point that it was to the other point, which was you to have 2 to,
Yeah, you have to convince 3
Two
or you have to
instead of
convince
3.
2.
you're having to convince less was what you were referencing.
Right.
I'm not sure that's access, though.
Yeah.
Access is the ability to
And
go
this
talk to
may
them,
have
not
been-
necessarily to convince them.
In either scenario, citizens still have access to their respective commissioners. That's
all the
constant.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I
right.
think though that this summary statement may not have captured the sense of all the sticky notes, so,
It's hard.
Maybe.
yeah.
That's the thing about when you do strategic planning with
Right.
sticky notes. You throw things up there to stimulate conversation. Unfortunately, we're stimulating conversation beautifully, but we're having a hard time honing in on.
Yes.
So is there
Yes.
agreement to, it's not a distinction, or we're not, we haven't.
I don't think it's a distinction.
Yeah, I think it depends on the implementation.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. As Dave was saying, 3 people could not answer their phones, and 5 people might not answer
Right.
their phones, so depends on the people.
So are we in agreement that it is not a distinction?
Right. I am.
I don't
agree.
think it's a distinction.
Okay.
I do think there is something that wasn't captured in these summary points, though, is that of how many people you need to convince in order to get your point across. And I don't think it's well captured in the summary statements here of needing to convince 3 people or convince 2 people. And that the professional lobbyists, if you like, or the people who have lots of time to schmooze, will be advantaged by having 5, and it will disadvantage ordinary citizens to have 5.
I'm not sure, within open meeting laws,
Yeah.
you have to give everyone the same argument. I don't know that it's any more difficult to convince 3 than it is to convince 2 if you're going before the board and making your pitch.
If you're glad-handing and taking them out to golf and lunch and tennis and whatever else, then it's more time, more investment to,
Well, then we want to discourage that. We should probably have about 15 commissioners so that we can keep that from happening.
actually, that, it makes it even worse. The more commissioners you have, the more the professional lobbyists are advantaged over the individual citizens.
Perhaps you know more about county government, but I'm not, I mean, I guess I'm shocked to hear that there are professional lobbyists here trying to lobby about,
That might be a little
What?
extreme hyperbole,
Yeah,
but, I mean,
yeah.
it's not like Washington DC, I grant you, but
well, I hope not.
I mean, one of the, the people who have more time, let's say as part of their job, maybe it's not their full-time role to get things passed, will be at an advantage with 5, more of an advantage than in a scenario relative to an individual citizen who, let's say, wants to split their property or something.
Yeah.
I have to respectfully take a little objection to that, if you would. It's really kind of double-edged sword. If I need something as a citizen and I go in and talk to my commissioner, I'm probably going to talk to one and ask them to talk to the others. We want to get this approved. If I'm a lobbyist, which I'm not, how much can it cost me to get what my client wants? If I have to take 5 people to play golf as opposed to 2, big difference. A lot easier to influence 2 people when you're in effect, for lack of a better choice of words, buying the vote, if you will, that it's easier to buy 2 and a lot less expensive than 3 or 5 or however. So I just think it really depends. We've discussed this several times tonight. Really depends on the people. I mean, if someone comes in and says, Phil, I'm really concerned about this, I'm going to listen and talk to them. And if, some developer wants to build 100 houses on Sherman Avenue, then they better have a lot of clout, because now you get my vote, okay?
So bear with me, because just from my own professional experience working with lobbyists, which is, you recognize, are there professional lobbyists at the county level? I don't know, but, they come from somewhere, and they start from a seed in smaller government, and they grow into what we know as lobbyists, the alligator Gucci shoe crowd, right? But, I do work with lobbyists a bit, and in different contexts of government, county, state, and federal. So what I've noticed at the county levels is actually in terms of that representation, you're usually funneled to the manager as a constituent, and the manager is the one that gets your issue amongst those commissioners. And so you better be on good terms with the manager. So if you're in the professional contracting services, so to speak, you stay on very friendly terms with the county manager. Definitely invite that person to your Christmas party. In terms of this representation issue about like 5 versus 3, who's got better access, actually it rechannels the gateway through which you have access. You're not going to those commissioners necessarily. At least in my experience, that's not what we do. I go to the manager for the county, and one of the county I'm talking of in particular, they have a dais that looks like the Politburo. There's so many commissioners. In order to get in front of them, you go through the manager, your issue, and if your issue isn't popular, it goes nowhere. It stops with the manager. You haven't convinced them. So this is just my personal experience, professional experience. And at the state level, I have this experience of, having to be with lobbyists and it's a big legislature, but they know who to go to, the correct people. And so you might go to not that representative, you go to his office manager, and that lobbyist introduce you, and maybe you get a meeting. So that's a different context, but I definitely have that experience in the county manager context of, you don't go to that commissioner who's, if it's your district, or even if it's at large, you're going through the manager. And either that manager has the gateway. Either he likes the issue or she likes the issue or not, and you get shut down there, or you get to fly from there to the other commissioners and get a presentation. So.
Are we worried here
So I
about?
just want to share that perspective
No, I
about 3
understand,
versus
but
5. It really doesn't matter, because
I
people
thought-
go to the commissioner,
I
to the
thought we were
manager.
talking about the
So-
voters, though. We wanted the
Yeah.
voters to be able, and so, I would hope, as I said, that this county is not, rife with lobbyists. If it is, then maybe maybe we might as well all give up, because we're doomed. So let's hope we're talking about the voters having access.
Sure. I digress with the example to highlight something which is really 3 versus 5 with what you have now with that 3. We were trying to evaluate factually, like, do you have better access or not, 3 versus 5. My viewpoint is probably do with the three, because you're able to go to them directly. You're not infused with this manager that really you're gonna go to. That's what's gonna happen with the five.
I
You're not gonna go
understand.
to them.
So it's, with the other, you have a choice. You
I
go to
don't
the
know how to
manager or
capture
you go
the
to
thought, but it changes the dynamic of of the public's interface with their representatives to a dynamic where you go through the manager. That's
But
been my
you're
experience.
talking about the lobbyist being sent to the manager. You're not
It's
talking
not
about
even
the
the lobbyist,
individual
because in
voter.
the county
the ones that
context, I'm
come and
not
talk
using
to
a
somebody being
lobbyist.
sent to the
Yeah,
manager.
in the county context, I'm not using lobbyists. That's my experience is you gotta go through that manager. You know, you might call your representative and he'll say, go talk to the manager.
That's how they keep the lobbyists at bay.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk to them, so they push them off on the manager. Sounds like a good tactic to keep the managers from, or the commissioners from getting bogged down with listening to lobbyists.
But,
I don't
but does
know.
that also end up impacting citizens? Do they get pushed off onto the manager as
I-
well?
I-
Is the
I hope-
open
yeah.
question.
Well,
So
I'm not-
it's
We-
more, so
we-
just to
we don't
clarify.
know.
The folks
It
I'm
depends on the
representing are
people.
little guys.
Yeah.
It depends on the people.
But not lobbyist types.
Yeah,
They're,
yeah.
they're small guys.
So you're suggesting the addition of the manager is more the key dynamic there than the 5 versus 3, in your experience?
I think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
We're at I think we are at the current form of government strengths. The first three, you say, are not a distinction. And I was wondering if there are any other ones that are not a distinction.
The 100%
Well,
representation about halfway
Give-
down the
Yeah.
page.
Given the last discussion, the third one, I think we might want to not consider a non-distinction in terms of the easier access. I mean, there's some debate about 5 versus 3, or if it's a manager versus non-manager, but there are likely changes. Maybe we consider it plausible or something, but there are changes there.
It would have to be reworded. The easier access is the problem. What do you mean by easier access?
Let's flag it for rewording then,
Yeah,
or clarify.
yeah.
So what are we doing?
The third one, we're going to say needs clarifying, and the first two are facts, or, sorry, non-differentiated.
Not a distinction for 1 and 2.
Yep,
And halfway down the page, the 100% representation we were saying was not a distinction.
Okay.
correct,
Whether it's 3 or 5, they're still elected at large.
yep.
And then the one second from the bottom, yeah.
Yes.
Got that, I have that one.
Goals and policies on a countywide basis. And if there's nothing further, based on Kurt's suggestion, we have a 10-minute break. A little longer than we anticipated here. Let's reconvene the meeting at this point. We have gone over facts and no distinctions. We are ready to move on to, which one do we want to do next?
One other one I wanted to raise as I was looking over these again during the break. About halfway down, the current strengths. We've
Current
got,
strengths.
Open meeting laws make the board more transparent. Given the tenor of our conversation around open meeting laws, I think this is a non-distinction.
Yeah.
I'll agree.
Okay. So what we have left is what, unknown and needs substantiation.
Yeah, I actually, there was need substantiation, and I also felt like I don't understand what this is trying to say. And I know we've touched on a
That
couple of
might be
those.
unknown.
Yeah, unknown. So
What do you want to do now, Kurt? Substantiation?
that's what I was debating, frankly. Yeah, let's
Toss a coin if you
do,
have to.
let's
Let's
do
move.
need substantiation if people feel like that. And ambiguous or needs clarification, we'll circle back. It was kind of going to be the leftovers after that, right?
Okay, so we're at the alternate form of government weaknesses, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There was another category that we've touched on peripherally along the way, and it has to do with costs, because I think there's something about costs in each one of these four categories. And I just flagged them when I was going through this to say, technically, we don't know, and it's officially kind of out of scope. I mean, we can call it out as something that is a risk, but we really can't say anything too meaningful about costs. Is it fair to just sort of flag those in for some category of sort of out of scope beyond our area of ability? I do think that,
Trending toward unknown.
Yeah.
yeah,
That was mine. I would have put it in the unknown category the way we discussed it.
okay,
Unknown.
Unknown, ambiguous, yeah.
yeah, okay.
I mean, if we want to talk about what is in or outside our purview, that's a different issue. It's not something that's within our scope. But it's an unknown, it's going to either happen or not happen if we make the change. And it's unknown what it will do.
That's fair.
You know, recognizing that how the budget is developed and the costs distributed throughout it, recognizing that, I would note that in the last study commission that had a report, I mean, they actually, I was going through the minutes today from one of the last ones, I remember looking at it, and they actually did look at kind of potential cost savings, said, here's what it would cost to hire a manager, here's what would happen if you reduce the load on the board, you know, in terms of salary or something. So they had some stuff like that. Maybe that was out of their scope, but I mean, they did kind of look at it. But I think it's, as prior meeting, you know, I had said maybe Nancy could get some kind of information that would help us in this regard, financial information, but that hasn't been forthcoming. And I just think it's kind of hard to know what happens once, let's say, the recommended form passes, the voters adopt it. It's kind of hard to know what the cost would be because there's some variables in there that the commissioners decide.
Yeah.
You know? So for here, it's kind of an unknown. It's out of our grasp.
I mean, theoretically, we can make a recommendation. I believe that the last report had recommendations that were outside the scope of the commission. But we can't force the issue. We can't put it on the ballot. It is up to the county commissioners what they do.
This is a struggle in terms of writing this up as well, because to me, in my gut and in my experience, professional and personal, I know that, you know, anytime you go changing government and maybe out of position here, it just continues to grow. I mean, it always grows. It just keeps doing it. And that just happens. So, you know, trying to write that up in a narrative is just more of an acknowledgement. You go changing things, you're going to change the dynamics of the costs, and likely probably increase those costs if you're adding people. You might be able to shift the line from here to there, and that doesn't cost you anything, but you add a person.
Well, I think
you know,
it's,
things like
I
that,
think
it's
it's
hard to
fair
explain.
game to include in the report.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
right.
suggesting
Here,
that spending time on it while
Yeah,
we're
you're right.
going through this
I
is probably not
digress. I
constructive.
digress too much, but I apologize, but, in the report, it's probably more appropriate to grapple with that, but for now, it's just kind of an unknown.
Yeah,
in
I
this
mean,
proposed
unfortunately, right now, we know that we're spending just under $300,000 on salaries for 3 commissioners. If we go to 5 commissioners at what city pay is, the $1,000 to $1,500 a month, you're looking at $12,000 to $18,000 per. Multiply that by 5, you've got 60 to, 90,000? Total. So the total salaries could be cut by 2/3 effectively.
And
we
if
don't
they,
know
and
that.
if they drop below a benefit level, then they could hypothetically save a bunch of money
A
on.
lot of money, like
on
40,
burden costs.
40%, 45%.
See, the way I see this exercise is really to help us get to the report.
Yes.
And I think what part of the report will be some things, again, the report is supposed to help the citizens understand what we've decided and why, and what impacts, both positive and maybe not. And I think we'll get to a category that will be, here are some things for you to consider, but we don't know. It's out of our scope. And costs are something that we don't know, because there could be jobs that are eliminated because of a reorganization. There could be all this, but you go out there and be upfront with people and say, cost may go up, it may go down, it may stay the same, who knows?
Yeah.
But it's something for you to consider when you vote on this initiative.
Yeah,
Which is why I was considering it, and I think you were too,
Unknown.
Brian, unknown.
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, so I think we can dispense with any further discussions on individual line items. And again, I think they appear in all 4 categories having to do with cost.
I think we can just classify them as
but
unknown.
right now, we're doing needs substantiation. I mean, when we go down this list, I'll put unknown by the.
Yeah, that works. That works.
Because we'll still have an unknown category.
Yep.
Okay,
So then we're gonna look at need substantiation, yeah.
BOCC less involved, looking at the first item. Possible, but I don't know that I don't know if we can even substantiate it.
which
Does
one was
anybody,
that?
first item on alternate form of government weaknesses.
I think it's unknown.
Yeah, I flagged it as an opinion sort of statement, because I think that while they are less involved administratively, because the administration is taken off their plate with the manager, it's unclear what else it means.
If they want, they're more
Beyond-
involved in policymaking and legislation. If they don't,
Right.
they're sitting back and smoking cigars.
Yeah, and frankly, some people view that as a strength rather than a weakness. I mean, so we also have to discuss where these things end up, strength versus weakness.
Actually, you just used the word opinion, and to me, the need substantiation and the unknown really, when I'm glancing at these, take the budget away from the clerk, may have conflict of interest implications. That's an opinion. A manager can bias BOCC. Well, that's an opinion, or you could bias this way or that way, BOCC. So I think maybe you could combine those two and we could go through it more quickly and say, these are opinions, not really, I don't know how you'd substantiate some of those. I don't,
That was my question on this first one. How do we substantiate the BOCC is less involved?
yeah, I don't know how, and if we can't
Same thing on a
substantiate
lot of
it,
this
then.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like Kristen's saying, how do we substantiate this
Well,
thing?
the one you first cited about taking the budget away from the clerk, I was gonna suggest that we should split that, because it's a statutory fact that it takes the budget away from the clerk. The conflict of interest is opinion, I agree with you. So I was gonna suggest that we take that one and break it into 2 statements, just for clarity.
Well, again, opinion, when you say, so this is weakness, takes the budget away from the clerk.
It-
You're
it's a-
assuming we
well-
all agree that that is a weakness. It
No,
may not be a weakness.
Yeah, no, I'm not discussing whether it's a strength or a weakness. I'm just saying, taking it away
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
clerk is factual.
Yeah, fact, okay,
Yeah.
right, gotcha.
Yeah, I think Kurt was saying we haven't decided yet what weaknesses and strengths are,
Correct.
So we're gonna.
even though they're on one of these lists.
So take budget away from the clerk is its own bullet.
Yeah.
And it's a,
Next
goes
bullet
to
af-
fact.
And it's a fact. And
Yeah.
the next bullet after that is called,
Potential conflict of
May
interest
have,
implications.
may have conflict of interest implications with the budget
movement.
movement, yeah, something like that. And then I'd put that under opinion or needs substantiation or something like that.
Do we want to just combine those two into opinion like Kristen was suggesting?
Works for me.
Do we have anything that we think we could substantiate on this stuff? I'm not sure how we would.
There were some that I thought might have evidence that could be discovered somewhere. One of them, was, and it's not in this category, it's in the alternate strings. But there was a statement, the summary statement says evidence that 5 is better than 3. And to me, it's like, okay, that begs for substantiation, what evidence?
Yeah, that wasn't mine. One of mine, so I don't know. But I guess if we go through though with opinion and then somebody wants to clarify that at least we get this done, because right now it's getting really confusing to flip the pages and.
I'm with you.
So I just want to make sure, the fourth one down may have a conflict of interest implications with the movement of the budget. We're showing that as a category called opinion. Is that
Sure.
what we agree upon?
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
Okay, can we go up to the
So we're
top?
eliminating need substantiation and unknown and you're just dumping in opinion.
Right now,
Combined version.
can we go to the first one on top? Ain't broke, don't fix it. Is that an opinion?
That's
I
an
considered
opinion.
that an opinion too.
Okay.
Aren't we on the alternate form of government weaknesses?
Yes.
Yeah, but
That's the
it's,
very
it's,
first one.
it's,
It's the first
on,
one.
it's like
That's it.
shows up everywhere
I
here.
think yours printed out differently.
Somebody like that
Mine
phrase.
did, mine's in a different order, then that's okay.
Yeah.
My
Okay.
first one was a
Ma-
BOCC, was less
that the
involved.
manager.
Somebody did it.
The manager can bias the BOCC, that's an opinion. It's not, actually, it's a fact, they can.
Yeah.
But will they? And will they, what I put on mine was it depends on who they hire, and it depends on, how involved the county
How
commission is.
professional the
And
manager
it
is.
assumes that they're not gonna have any interaction with the 17 departments.
And but bias is a term that has a negative
Yeah,
implication. I mean, as a manager, I don't think I biased my boss. I think I brought information to him. I researched things for him and, but maybe I biased him, but
Well, if you're a poor manager and you're
That's
an
a
advocate, you
subjective
might
thing.
bias somebody by weighting the information you bring to your
yeah,
boss.
right,
But that's somebody that shouldn't be in that job.
right.
so is that an opinion, manager can bias BOCC?
I think so.
I say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd consider it an opinion, yeah.
Okay. And the next one down is an opinion also.
What's that one?
But
The-
BOCC less involved?
Yeah, I think depending on involved in what, because
Yeah.
I think it's factual to say that they're less involved in the administration.
Right.
And whether they're less involved in other things is unclear.
They have the time to be more involved in policy, they have the time to be more involved in legislation. They have the
We've
time-
got that in
They have the
other
time to be
places.
more involved with the citizens,
Yeah,
but will they?
yeah.
So
Okay.
So
I would
that's
go with
what,
opinion here as well.
that's fine.
Okay, I have them in a different order.
Okay, so that.
Number of BOCC increases conflict,
Right, that's the
Opinion.
next one.
okay?
Opinion?
It's
I think that's
opinion.
opinion.
Okay, the next one down, manager could become a filter between BOCC and the 17 departments is the same as the biased one, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a more explicit statement of it, yeah.
You want to eliminate one of those two, or just keep both of them?
I'll keep it as an opinion right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Opinions aren't going to carry a lot of weight in the final
Okay.
report.
Increase bureaucracy and decrease decisiveness. Opinion.
Actually, I feel it's the other way, but that's opinion.
I think that's why it's an opinion, because some of us don't
know.
see it that way at all.
Actually, I'm kind of the opinion that it might be good to split.
You're of the
it.
opinion that.
No, yes, that we should split this one, because when we say increases bureaucracy, technically it does, because it adds more people to the government process. So by definition, that is increasing bureaucracy in a technical sense of bureaucracy, not in the pejorative sense necessarily. As to changing the decisiveness, that's opinion, I think.
Well, as far as increasing bureaucracy, are you suggesting that the sheriff's office is bureaucratic?
I think any government office is bureaucratic.
More bureaucratic than the county commissioners?
Just looking at the technical term, it is a government agency, it is bureaucratic. I mean,
Well, it's government by desks, bureaucracy.
yeah,
By putting one administrator in, you've eliminated 3 or 5 county commissioners being involved in those decisions. That's actually a reduction in the bureaucracy on those decisions. You no longer have to have a publicly noticed meeting, public information gathering, public debate, and a public vote for a simple administrative decision. That decreases bureaucracy.
Yeah, what does bureaucracy mean?
yeah. I mean, I
I-
see what you're saying, is that it streamlines the administration. And I would agree with the statement that it streamlines the administration for the 17 departments.
Okay, here's bureaucracy. Administration of a government chiefly through bureaus or departments staffed with non-elected officials. 2, the departments and their officials as a group, so you're calling them the bureaucracy. And 3, management or administration marked by hierarchical authority among numerous offices and by fixed procedures.
And so we are adding one more layer,
The-
if you like, which is gonna streamline administration, but technically is an increase in the bureaucracy.
I still think it's opinion, because I think it's the way we define it and see the structure. I mean, I could have called myself a bureaucrat too, but I really didn't obstruct anything. My job was to facilitate, so.
Bureaucracy is
But I
not,
was a bureaucrat because I was in, a cog in the wheel, reporting up with people reporting to me, so.
yeah, bureaucracy is not necessarily negative, but it frequently
So
devolves
does
that
it add
way.
anything? Well, I guess that's my argument then. Increases bureaucracy, we can't agree if that's good or bad, indifferent, it might just this, it might, so it's not, would this really be something we'd put in a report when we,
Probably not.
yeah, so I'd say it's.
Opinion is fine, I mean, especially around the decisiveness question.
Okay, the next one is increased cost if no change from full power.
And that's the cost unknown.
So that's
item.
unknown.
Yeah,
Okay, and then the last one is also unknown, I'm assuming, which is unintended,
Consequences.
No, I thought we crossed that one out before.
did?
I thought, I did.
well,
No, I
or,
think we just ended up in a heated discussion.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I guess that's how I ended the discussion in my mind.
I think maybe we call this one unknown. I mean, it's, yes, there are gonna be, well, whenever you make a change, there are unintended consequences, but, I mean, what they are, we don't know. And we also don't know the magnitude of the infrastructure costs.
Okay, so we're done on alternate form of government weaknesses, I think.
I
that
think so
matches
also.
my
I didn't see
record.
anything we missed.
Okay,
Moving right along.
so
Alternate form of government strengths.
the first one
Improved
there
growth
is
management. I
allows,
believe it, but it's an opinion.
Yeah, it's an
Okay.
opinion.
Yeah,
I think most of these are
Potential
opinion.
cost savings, I
This-
believe that's
this-
also
That's
an
an
opinion.
opinion?
no, well, I
That
would
could be
call
an
that one
unknown.
unknown, cause it's cost
Okay,
related.
unknown.
Okay,
You got it.
unknown.
Increased
Increased representation, opinion.
This one, we already debated around
Yeah, we took that one out.
the representation
There
issue.
were some better opinions on this, we just leave it as an opinion.
Did we strike that one then? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, that was one of, yeah, we were focusing on the word representation, and we said there was no difference.
No difference.
Yeah,
That, I think that was on one of the other ones that we were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. That
Yeah.
wasn't.
Maybe,
but,
yeah,
I mean, subject to the definition of representation.
yeah.
so the second one down is unknown,
The cost savings, yes.
right? And
Yep.
then increased representation is an opinion.
Right.
How about the brings,
That one, I believe everybody just said was no change.
no change?
It's no change subject to defining the
Whatever it means.
representation.
Okay,
Okay. Professional expertise.
expertise,
I would say this one is opinion also. It kind of depends on who they hire, right?
If they do a good job hiring, yes. If they don't,
Yeah.
no.
Right.
I agree.
I have no problem with that.
It's either an opinion or an unknown.
Yeah.
Better
Unknown,
implementation of
probably.
policies.
Opinion?
Once again, if you get a guy who's doing the job, that's his job to implement policies.
Yeah.
Yep.
But whether he does it or not,
Yeah,
Yep.
so
so
Opinion?
unknown.
I don't know.
which one's unknown?
Better implementation of policies, I think.
Better implementation of policies.
Yeah, I'm good with unknown on that.
Hold on a second, I'm.
Budget development, more coordinated, less partisan.
This one, to me, it was either unknown, I just wasn't sure how having the manager do it makes it more coordinated than having the clerk do it. Is this an opinion or is it unknown?
I don't think this was mine, but, in reading it now, it doesn't matter if it's an opinion or an unknown. Basically, when you've got one of the row officers doing it, there's the perception of partisanship because they're in one of those 6 positions. And what I heard from talking to county managers is that one thing that the row officers actually appreciated with it is that they felt that they were not competing with each other and that not one of them had access to more information than they did. Because you'd have the manager working with each one in terms of what their budget was, pulling it together and presenting it. Again,
So
but
basically,
I'm happy to say opinion.
there's
I'm
a
not-
feeling that the clerk is in a privileged position because he can not only see his own budget, but he gets to
he
see
can
what
see-
everyone else
he
is
can see
asking
everybody
for.
else's, right.
Yeah.
And in
So that's what the less partisan, I would think, meant.
In this, there was the implication that the county clerk might be over budgeting.
Oh,
In the testimony, because the clerk's office was giving money back, they didn't use up their entire budget. Where others are running out of money, the clerk's office had excess. And if that's the case, that's a high probability that he was over budgeting.
That's not what he said. It was the money that they put back into the fund was done through outside streamlining and programs that brought money in. Recouping, yeah.
Which should
Again.
have been in their budget.
Well, but yeah,
It's
doesn't matter.
right. Either could be correct. I see that you're upset about one side, you're upset about the other side. Either could be correct, you know? So let's just move on. It's not one that we can resolve.
Opinion?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that-
So that's
Yeah,
an
that's
opinion.
opinion.
okay.
Evidence that 5 is better than 3,
This one I had marked for substantiation, but if nobody takes ownership on it, then I don't know where we're gonna find evidence.
I think that was Bob's. I remember him. I asked him what his writing was.
Okay.
needs substantiation or
Ask
opinion?
him.
Opinion needs substantiation, yeah.
Yeah, matter.
This is probably the one that I thought was most likely to be able to be substantiated, but.
Okay, the next one is quorum of 3 versus 2 allows more collaboration.
I thought
Took that
we already kind of dealt with that one in terms of the collaboration.
It was on one of the other lists, so we were
Yeah.
dealing with it. If you take collaboration to mean subcommittees, yes. If you
Yeah.
take collaboration outside that, not necessarily.
That's what it was. We considered this to be a duplicate of the allows for subcommittees.
So do I take it out?
I think so. I mean, we can kind of attach it to the allow for subcommittees and just say that's a fact, because, yeah, I believe that was our decision on the allows for subcommittees. It was a
So
statutory fact.
Take it out and just take it out because we have subcommittees?
Yeah, that works too.
Okay, so the next one is taken out, which is then the county manager can help break down silos and improve coordination.
Opinion?
Opinion.
And if he's doing a good job, yes. If he doesn't, no.
Yep. 5, BOCC expands candidate pool.
Opinion.
I'm not
The-
sure.
It's an opportunity for
Yeah.
more people to participate. It doesn't mean the candidate pool will change. It may be the same
The
people running
the
for.
candidate pool is still the residents of the county who are of a certain age, et cetera, et cetera.
I think what the intent of this one was, is if we went part-time, if they went part-time, because we can't do that.
Which is out of
They-
scope.
Which is out of scope, but if they went part-time, then you may increase the candidate pool because there'd be people that have full-time jobs that could do this on a part-time basis. But it's still an opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expands BOCC's perspectives.
That one probably is legitimate, because if you have 5 people, the odds are you have 5 opinions, rather than 3 opinions.
It would logically assume that.
Yeah, I put it down, I noted that it was a plausible opinion. I mean, I actually went through the opinion ones and I said, hey, this one seems plausible, the
Or is
other
it a
ones
fact,
I'm
or is it
looking for more.
a fact? Or-
I wouldn't go quite so
No, I
far as a
wouldn't go to
fact
fact.
myself.
I wouldn't
What
go
would
as
you
far as
call it?
fact.
We don't have a
Probable.
category. huh?
We don't have a probable category.
Yeah.
I realize, I know,
I'm gonna
I
put an
broke the rules a
opinion.
little bit.
Opinion.
Okay.
Yeah,
Again, when we do the report, this is just helping us focus on
Right.
reporting.
yep,
Right.
yep,
Okay, county manager promotes less partisanship, that's an opinion.
yep.
Opinion.
Okay, slackers have less impact, well, this is actually not. I mean, if you have 5 people and one is not doing the job, I think this was yours, Kurt, wasn't
Yeah.
it? That 20% of the people were not doing the job. If you have one not doing the job and 3 people, you have 33%. So
Right.
it actually is not an opinion, it is a fact, in a way.
Yeah, I just don't know if it rises to the level of factualness that we were talking about
Right.
earlier.
It doesn't, but I don't know.
It's not statutory, but it is a fact.
It is
Yeah,
a
but
fact.
you don't know that the
Statistical fact.
less
Perhaps
impact.
your
right?
term of plausible opinion, then we look at those when we're writing the report and see how, if we can incorporate those. You
Kind
wanna
of think
call
it's
that
opinion. I think it's opinion.
a plausible? Okay.
Right? 'Cause
And it's not plausible, Brian?
Well, then we'll get into debate, because some of us will think, so.
Anyway, let's go
More
on.
time-
We can tag it as opinion now, and we'll
Now,
figure out how
more
to deal
time
with
for
it. so you're getting
planning.
it up.
It's your fault, Kirk, you came up with the word plausible opinion.
Oh,
And I
keep
liked it.
pitching it.
I liked it.
more time for
For planning and
policy.
policy.
Opinion.
Uh,
If they go to halftime and even if they offload 70% of their work and they go to halftime,
See, it depends on,
it's
Then they have more
debatable,
time.
so it's
Yeah.
opinion, I think.
it depends on how they organize it,
Exactly.
And the problem is they're all CEOs.
yeah.
And CEOs set their own hours and just make the determination what they're gonna do. Nobody can tell them what to do.
Improve continuity across elections.
This one,
It's again,
it's an opinion.
yeah. See, a lot of this depends on who
And
they
and I
hire.
think that it was Phil's thought there in terms of the manager would improve continuity across elections, so.
Probably right.
Okay, opinion, the next one is more public access to the BOCC. Again, this goes back to,
We've been debating that one already, and
Yeah.
I think it's opinion, given the
Yeah.
debate.
is that what we showed we had, I think I may have messed one up. I'll go back to it in a second. More time for community outreach.
Opinion.
Well, they have more time for it. Whether they're
Yeah.
gonna spend it on it is another matter.
See, that's the problem with a lot of these, is it
Again, it depends on how
There's
they
the
implement it.
potential
Yeah.
for
right.
these things
It's got
to
a
be
potential,
a
yeah.
positive,
But
but
I
they may not
think
work.
see, when you write, that's the kind of stuff, when you write the report, we would say, here are some things that are unprovable at the moment, but here are the potentials that may make this a good idea, and here are some potential things that we don't know that may make it a not-so-good idea. And I think that, again, you're giving information
Yeah.
about what the voters should consider when they go and vote.
So this one reaches our plausible opinion?
Yeah, but I'm not putting plausible opinion. Okay, strategic planning will be part of the job. It is part of,
Business continuity? Can we
Well, the
skip over
business
that?
continuity planning.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we had
These
flagged that as
these
an
are all
opinion.
mine, and I'm happy to say they're opinion based on
thank you, Dave.
a lifetime, but
Yeah.
only one opinion.
So strategic planning is an opinion.
You'll be happy to
No, we
know I
already
marked a
put
few
that
of
in
them
as
as
well.
Business
plausible.
principles, you know, they might,
Strategic planning is part of the job as a fact. They
Okay,
did it or not was another matter, but it
Yeah.
was
Well,
part of the
That
job.
was it. No
again, it
difference.
depends on what they write as the job description, right? I mean, strategic
Well, actually,
plan-
no, it's the commissioner's job.
So, yeah, okay. But then it's a non-differentiator because it's part of their job with 3 or
I
5.
believe Brian was quoting something out of the statute that gave strategic planning as part of their job, the commissioner's job. Not
Right,
necessarily
so
the
that should be a
manager's job.
non-differentiator then.
So is it a fact,
No, I think Kurt had it, it's not differentiated.
non-differentiation?
It's a part of their job under statute regardless.
Okay, hold on a second. Sorry, guys.
It's okay, take your time.
Meaning like, with the current form, they have to do strategic planning. Maybe they don't.
They're
but-
supposed to be, yeah.
But they don't have time.
It's part of the
But
job,
then-
whether they
but
do it or
then
not.
If you put it under a manager, it's part of the job, so
Okay.
it's no difference. It has to happen somewhere.
Okay, not a distinction. Then the next one, business principles with county manager opinion.
Yeah, it depends on who, I'll,
It's how you should hire them, but it's
Yeah.
up in the air whether
Yeah.
it's going to be done right or
If
not.
the-
So it's opinion.
if the whole group decides to hire somebody who has no business background, well, they're gonna get what they paid for.
Right. Okay, and then the last one here is, what was the second? County manager can respond more rapidly to emergencies, and again.
And that's one of mine too.
I actually believe that one's true.
I do too, actually, but,
County manager can respond more rapidly to emergency situations.
and that's,
Only if they've done a decent job of planning.
right,
Well, even if you haven't done a decent job, it's one person makes a decision. You don't have to get through 3 people together and have an open meeting to try to decide.
That's fair.
but what are we calling it?
Obviously, it has to be an administrative decision.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
legislative
I'd say it's
policy, but-
plausible, I mean, but I think that still falls into the opinion category.
See, it's hard for me because it is part of the job. And when you run an operation, you are the crisis manager. And today, the crisis manager are 3 county commissioners. And tomorrow, it would be 1 person. So I think it is, again, it depends on the person, but just on experiences that I've had in that role, it's a lot easier when you're the 1 person.
Well, we've actually witnessed what it was like under the current system, and we did not do well in terms of responding and keeping county going. We got it together after a while, but there were weeks there where you couldn't get anybody on the phone, you couldn't get anybody through a website, you know.
I'm not sure honestly, though, that if we had had a manager in place, we would have done any better.
Well, that's your opinion. I'm telling you that my experience, that's why it's an opinion, is that's part of what a manager does to make sure you can keep it going. But that's opinion.
If they do the job well.
If they do yeah.
That is
Can I
correct.
make a comment?
And some of the lines, and nobody on the phone was in the clerk's office or the assessor's office or other offices, which the manager won't have any purview over to a certain degree.
Hang on a second, Kurt. Phil?
You know, I have to agree, it's an opinion. But if you read the literature on forms of government, particularly the creation of the commission form, one of the criteria that it says is a benefit is that it allows for a quicker response in an emergency. Now, that may be true, it may not, depending on the emergency. County manager still has to do the same process. Okay, we have this problem, then that goes to the commission before a decision is made. I don't think any manager is gonna just arbitrarily decide the emergency demands this. So I don't know that you really gain a lot of speed. You hope you get a more thorough review so that the response that's given is more appropriate.
Well, I think if it's an administrative decision, it's faster, it's more decisive, it's quicker. If it's a policy decision, it certainly has to go to the county commissioners.
Yeah.
For example, who's gonna staff the phones right now because of COVID? That's an administrative decision that he can make and say, you're gonna be on the phones. We're gonna be answering phones. Are we going to wear masks in the county? That's a policy decision that would have to go to the commissioners. No administrator would be able to make that kind of decision. So it would depend on what the decision was, whether it would be something that the administrator could take on or not.
I agree with that.
So it's an opinion right now?
I go with
Yep.
plausible opinion.
Yep.
It's opinion. It'll be plausible someday.
That's
All right.
a PO, Dave.
Yeah, right. I'm not doing any POs. Okay, current form of government weakness. Administrative duties burdensome, and this is opinion, I'm assuming.
Well,
I think
we're
so.
not doing administrative duties and strategic planning very well right now, but it's an opinion why.
Right, exactly, yeah. I mean, some people do it better than
Take that as
others.
an opinion.
Lack of professionally trained management.
Again, opinion. And
Plausible opinion.
Brian, plausible, I agree with plausible. That was kind of Brian was pointing out, the opinion aspect of that.
Lack of coordination function.
I had put a question mark on this one. I wasn't quite sure what it was trying to say. Is this talking about the administrative coordination of the
Yeah.
17 departments?
That's the way I
I'm
took
not
it.
sure, or is it trying to talk about coordination with the other 6 silos, or?
Yeah.
I don't know what this one is.
I wasn't sure
Unless
either.
anybody here wants
It's,
to,
it's not mine,
claim
so,
it?
No.
I don't know.
It's not
If
mine.
it's mine, I
Can
forgot
we
about it.
put an unknown on this one, David?
Well, yeah, we could, unknown, or we could strike it.
We could just strike
I'd
it.
almost strike it.
Unless Bob wants to, I mean, we could put a question for Bob on it in case he knows and can illuminate the topic. And if he can't, then we could strike it.
I'll just strike it and say, confirm with Bob.
With Bob, yeah.
That works.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay. Okay, the next one's not a distinction and a fact. Okay,
Right.
larger impact if one isn't doing the job. That's the same.
It's the counterpart of
Yeah.
the, other one.
And what do we say that one was? A fact?
Let's be consistent.
Statistical fact?
It's a fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, is that what we said
Actually, I think on
before?
the other one, we called it an opinion.
Yeah.
although
Did we call
was
it
a
an opinion?
statistical
Okay, let's
fact.
put it as an opinion.
Did we do an
then.
opinion?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
opinion.
I'll take that as an
Oops,
opinion.
wrong one.
Okay, limited number of viewpoints.
This is the converse of the more perspective, expands the BOCC perspectives.
So it's an opinion.
What did we label that one? Did we call that
I
one?
think we called that
opinion?
one opinion.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it's a strong opinion.
Plausible
Okay.
opinion again.
Plausible.
whatever.
Less time for 3 to interact with the community, that's an opinion.
Yep.
Because okay, the next one's a fact, and then we have can promote, political,
Politicization of
Thank you.
administrative decisions?
I'm going down for the
Opinion.
count.
I think that,
Opinion, can attract people who need salary and benefits. This is,
It's either an opinion or it falls into the cost unknown category.
I think it may be unknown.
The way this one's structured, I'd almost say it's an opinion item.
Yeah, it's, I don't know that
It
that's,
isn't defining the costs, it's just saying
Yeah.
that salary and benefits may attract people.
yeah, this
Just
may
for
be
that
the
reason.
reason people run, not because they want to serve the community. They need the salary and the benefits. I
I can't believe that's true.
I
just-
know, I
Because
know.
of-
I'm
in
okay
today's
with it being
economy, that
opinion.
would be highly unlikely.
Shocking,
Yeah.
shocking.
Okay, I think I have everything,
I
but I
believe so.
can't guarantee I do.
We've
So-
still got to go through current strengths.
Oh, I guess I don't have everything.
Well, we have everything on that page.
We're almost there.
Oh, thank God. Easier access to BOCC for citizens. That goes back to the whole,
I think we
I thought
already
we struck
had
that
that one
already.
as no distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we came up with no distinction
Yeah.
on that one.
okay, hold on a second. Go ahead. Okay,
Well, no, Brian had the point that with the commission manager, you would potentially be limiting your access to the commissioners by having the commission manager. Wasn't that what the
You
point you
might
were
if,
saying?
if they punt citizens to the manager,
Which they could.
I
which
doubt
they
it.
But again,
could,
I mean,
but
if you're just doing 3 and 5, and no, there's no difference there, but with the commission manager, there could be.
They can punch you to Nancy Pluff right now. I mean, there's no real difference in their
Yeah.
ability to say, I'm not gonna talk to you.
that's a fair point.
maybe that explains why I always get Nancy on the phone?
Yep, that's it. They don't want to talk to you, sorry,
Try
Brian.
changing your name.
Okay, We're okay.
I think the next one is micromanagement.
So,
Micromanagement.
yeah,
It's an opinion.
it's an opinion, yeah.
Yeah,
And staying busy with less time for overreach, also an opinion.
agreed.
Hold on a second, I screwed up.
The next one on accountability to voters, I wasn't sure what it was trying to say, so I had a question mark on it.
3 are elected now, 5 would be elected then. I'm not sure
Correct.
we have any less accountability.
It's either a non-differentiator or it's trying to say something I didn't quite grasp.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a commission manager who's functioning in making decision-making,
The manager could.
is not accountable to the voters. So if it's talking about the commissioners, no, there's no change. If it's talking about adding the commission manager, that person is not accountable to the voters.
Micromanaging is.
Yeah, well,
We need clarification on what are they referring
So it
to.
could be a statutory fact if it's referring to the role of the manager.
Correct.
But we don't know, so
I
to me,
think it needs to be clarified. Maybe
yeah.
we just flag it for clarification or
Yeah.
further expansion or something.
Well, what we can do is, right now, we can say accountability to voters. Manager, statutory fact, commissioners, opinion.
That works.
Okay, commissioners, statutory fact. Is that-
No, manager, statutory fact. If you're talking about the county manager, he's not elected.
right, okay.
If you're
Yeah.
talking about the commissioners, they continue to be elected.
right.
Got it.
Yeah, in which case I would say it's not an issue, so I guess presumably
depends on-
it's referring to the manager then.
So manager, fact, commissioners, no distinction.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, next one's fact, not a distinction, not a distinction. Ain't broke, don't fix it, is an opinion.
Opinion.
I was-
The power is diffused. I was wondering if this was referring to the other electeds or the BOCC.
Silos, you mean? Like a silo?
Well, we're not changing the other electeds to silos at all.
Right, so I wasn't sure, I mean, really, my question was, what is this referring to?
I
I
don't
have
know, I
no
can't
idea.
claim it. Interesting, nobody wants to claim the ones that are ambiguous now.
Yeah, I didn't write it.
Wasn't
but
me.
My interpretation is that there were these silos and power is diffused. You got the treasurer, you got an assessor, you get a clerk.
But that,
But
but
that's,
that
then
doesn't
it's,
change.
then it's non-distinct.
Then it's
doesn't
non-distinction,
change,
if
yeah.
that's what we're
Yeah,
talking about.
Yeah,
Okay,
so. I think
Okay.
that's right.
Doing?
So we can just call it no distinction.
okay, okay.
One second.
Oh, here's BOC can hire assistant again, is this?
I thought we.
We already
have that
called that one
somewhere
fact.
else?
That was
Yeah, that was
factual,
fact.
right? I think.
Okay, we call that a fact, right? A chief officer, operating officer is less than 4 years.
Yeah, we wrangled that one. Did we strike that one because it's sort of the converse of the
I don't have
Four-year
anything
cycle.
on it at all.
for a change?
I
It is-
feel like we've talked about these same things.
Yeah, we did.
Well, we did talk
covered
about
this
this
one
one.
at
They
length.
appear on several locations.
Yeah.
Like, whoa,
Why?
Yeah,
it'd be nice to be consistent, but
we can just mark it
As
for,
far as strength or weakness, I look at that as being nothing. I don't
Strike
know.
it?
Strike it?
sure.
I think that's what we decided before, actually.
Okay. Then I failed to act before.
Yeah, me too, then. Okay, has options to increase efficiency.
You know, I flagged this one as unclear because they have options in either arrangement.
Maybe it's
So-
no distinction. Well, there's a distinction, it's just,
I think what
Future
someone was saying,
stability.
since this is the current form of government strengths, I think, this wasn't mine, that somebody was trying to say, right now, and this is a point that Tamara has made over and over, that right now they have the opportunity to do something. They haven't done it, but they do have the option to increase efficiency.
So-
But
so
now
is
you
it-
look at efficiency and what does that mean? So I think you now get into the,
So would it be fair to rephrase this one to say that the current form, well, not changing the form preserves their optionality? Whereas
No,
we're
because they
taking
would
away
still have the same
optionality.
options after the change. The only
No,
difference
they
is there would be
don't,
a
but-
manager who'd take over the administrative.
Correct. But that takes away some of their optionality. It doesn't take away all of their optionality, but it takes away some of their optionality.
Right, but they still have options.
But it says options to increase efficiency, so it's the to increase efficiency that makes it, well, like, what's that mean?
I know, agreed. I'm just
So I
trying
think
to
it's
get
opinion.
it to be a more clear statement in
So what are
terms
we
of a
doing?
It's really,
distinction.
you know, it's not increase, sure, a general way of saying it's increase efficiency, but really what you're doing in the current form, the complaint, as I understand it, is we're swamped with administrative duties. We don't have enough time to do big thinking and planning, right? And so increased efficiency, they're offloading the administrative stuff onto this administrator and saying, you're dealing with this, we're the big thinkers. And so increased efficiency is really just, the BOCC has options to lighten its administrative burden.
Actually, it doesn't, because under the statute, they're still responsible.
right,
If we
right,
don't
right.
change the form,
That's right.
they can
Yeah.
hire somebody to help them, but that person has no responsibility and can't take any authority.
Even with the manager, the commissioners are still ultimately responsible, so it
They are.
doesn't actually.
But
take
not for
anything.
administrative decisions.
Yeah, they are. I mean, if an administrative decision goes wrong, they're still the ones on the hook for it.
Well, with the voters, yes.
And from the state's point of view, I think, as well. I mean, they can't punt it simply by saying, oh yeah, we hired this person and they did a terrible thing.
Right.
They probably will, but
But I was wondering if there's,
Character again.
it's like, there's, each form has ways to improve efficiency, but one is more, perhaps viewed more, is more effective or attuned to what is needed than the other form.
Yeah, I almost see this one as not having a distinction because they have options either way. Some options are eliminated, but they still have options.
Agreed.
Right, did
That's
you
why
say
I- that's
it
why I was trying to see
not
if it
distinction? Like
was worth-
Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of
All
agree
right.
with that. So the
way
only
it's phrased
distinction
here,
is in the substance
I don't see a
of it
distinction.
to some degree. There's a distinction, but it's like the degree to which they can improve their
Yes.
efficiency in certain areas, like administration,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay, so that one is not a distinction. Next one, full-time commissioner, CEO.
I don't know what that means.
Opinion, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know what that one was trying to say.
I
If
think it
anyone wants
was
to own it.
contrasting full-time versus part-time.
Well, this is the dilemma when you basically take a lot of comments and try to get a
Yeah.
theme.
Yeah,
You may
I
not
agree.
have captured it correctly.
Well, this
BOC
is, actually, this one is something that's out of our purview. Are they full-time or are they part-time?
Well, it's kind of the current form, but and they're sort, it's not
current
even
form is
stated as
full-time-ish.
full-time. It doesn't even, there is no such thing as full-time, part-time.
Right.
Not for a
It's just
CEO.
you're a commissioner and,
Yeah.
and you have responsibilities that you need to meet.
Yeah.
And then you work to figure out what your salary should be with the other commissioners. That there is
You
no,
can do that in 10
Full-time.
hours or 50.
right.
So,
but isn't the issue that's being raised here, I didn't write this, that the three commissioners, full-time, which is the current system, they act as the CEO. But it's a three-headed CEO, so how do you get a decision where people agree? There's not one person to go to. To me, that's saying that it, I'm not sure what it means, other than someone's opinion, but
I think calling it opinion is fair.
Yeah.
okay, then quicker response to emergencies is an opinion, I'm assuming. Then the last one on here is, the next one is not a distinction, and then 3 is cheaper than 5 full-time.
Opinion, I think.
Opinion.
Did we skip the
We skipped,
efficient
yeah.
decision-making process?
Yes, we did.
I thought that was an
The
opinion.
3 is cheaper than full-time, that's a cost which we're trying to avoid with the
Okay.
unknowns.
Correct.
So,
And then we
okay,
go back up to efficient
opinion.
decision-making process.
opinion,
Opinion, yeah.
and then the last one is unknown,
Yes,
Yeah,
that's how we were handling costs at this point.
right?
yeah.
And I think when you look at the two different forms, weaknesses, strengths, and you see the same thing show up as a strength on one and a strength on
Yeah.
another, I think we realize that's definitely opinion, because otherwise that wouldn't make sense.
That's a great point. Yeah, right.
Right.
Okay. Actually, we've done very well tonight on this, I believe. We've gotten through the entire thing. We've got items differentiated at least. looking at down the road, what do we need to do with this still in order to get it structured for the final report?
So one thought that just burst into my mind was
You've been
just,
on writing committees, yes.
well, no, I was just short of, getting into the writing narratives, but I mean, earlier in the last meeting, I talked about, a table and then a narrative, but the table for purposes of, I think, facilitating discussion, because we've identified categories, if you had categories and then lined up the things, commonalities under those categories, what you might find in comparing them is you'd have the characteristic that is a shared observation in each, and maybe that's no distinction, let's say, between the two. And the third box over might be a discussion of the variables, and that essentially is like the strengths and weaknesses of each, but it's a discussion of variables. It's a recognition that there are certain characteristics that are common throughout offices, and what's happening here is you're distributing them differently in this proposed recommended form. And so that's shown, there's no difference between this characteristics that exists within the government as to how to do something, but you're distributing the responsibility for it differently. And the third box over becomes just a kind of a narrative of that, where you try and articulate, like, here's who's doing what as to that characteristic
So are you
under this proposed change.
Are you suggesting that a topic such as emergency decision-making
Right.
would be something, and then there'd be a discussion about how the current versus the alternate form might address that?
Right. So there's characteristics of government, that all governments have characteristics. That's what we're going through, really teasing out here, right? And it's a question of who does them in the existing versus recommended. And so if you tease out, here are the common characteristics, and okay, there's no difference, but perhaps that they both share that characteristic. Over in the third column, you can have a bit of a narrative about, like, well, here's what it is in the current form, and there's either limitations, or there's great strengths to that, or what have you, but you can, and then on the other hand, in this recommended change, it would be like this, doing that characteristic. Here's how that would get distributed, and here's the good and perceived, less than good of that. And that way you've written your narrative in that third column, but you've got these things in a framework that you can discuss them point by point, going through them. And the ones where there's an opinion, right, I think it would find itself same way. You just put it in a table. There's some common things on which you share opinion, like costs. Costs are greater with this form versus that form, right? And just in a table format, you have costs isolated, and you've got a column over there where you can then have the narrative. I don't know, it's just, this, as I said, this just burst to mind. I do a lot of things in tables when I'm analyzing them, and then it helps me write the brief.
Yeah,
So,
that's okay.
That's just kind of how I go through things.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with structuring it in a table. I'm just trying to understand, if we have a statutory fact, there really isn't anything to discuss on that item, I would imagine. If we have an opinion, that definitely comes into discussion in that third column you're talking about. If we have a no distinction, then it really doesn't matter a great deal, if it's, we have 6 row officials now, and we're gonna have 6 row officials elected under the new one, there really isn't much point of discussing what the 6 row officials do or anything like that, because there's no change, it's no distinction between them.
But on
Is
the
that
other-
what you're talking about? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, it is. You capture the concept, and then the hard part becomes like, there might be opinion about like open meeting law issues, right? 3 versus 5 commissioners. And, maybe that's an item, and it's just recognized, look, that's a possibility, perhaps, but the law is the law. And it could play out in different ways, but the law is pretty clear about what constitutes a violation of the open meeting law, whether it's 3 or 5.
Yeah, it's possible for 3 to violate the law, it's possible for 5 to violate the law.
Yeah, and if you wanted, to get a little bit into it and just have a narrative, theoretically, maybe you could have chain meetings, but the fact of the matter is that would violate the law. So, at least the spirit. I think that's what the prosecutor Barry was saying when he was in here, because I pointedly asked him, couldn't you daisy chain meetings such that you get around this? And he said, not really, because that violates the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment, please? I understand what you're saying, Brian. It makes sense. Put up a chart that's easy for the public to see and understand. But I kind of know now what are facts and what are opinions and what are unknowns at this point. But aren't we supposed to have strengths and weaknesses? Which of those facts are a strength? I mean, we haven't done that as far as I'm concerned, unless I missed something on the purpose of the report.
Well, I think that's, we look at these things that are opinions. And opinion, the number of BOCC increases conflict. Okay, is that necessarily a problem? Is that necessarily a weakness? It might be a strength that there is going to be a more heated discussion before they make a decision. I'm not taking that position right now, but just for the sake of argument, any of these, whether they're weaknesses or strengths, I think that's something that's open to discussion with what Brian was talking about with this narrative. Not just what's the difference between the two, but also, is this a strength? Is this a weakness? Under what circumstances is it a strength or a weakness?
I guess what I'm asking is, when do we decide which are strengths and which are weaknesses?
I don't think we need to make a singular decision. I think that that's part of exploring the topic, as Brian was suggesting.
Well, the restaurants are all closed at this point, but at this point, it's 8:30. Why don't we put this one to bed for right now? We've reached an end point. Let's come back next week and let's hit what Phil was talking about. Let's go in. What are the strengths and weaknesses? And I think we can look at this. We might not agree, and that's where opinion comes in. Some people are gonna think something is a strength, some are gonna think it's a weakness. Let's discuss it. Leave it as an open issue. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses of each? We'll get something there. We may not get a perfect agreement, but we'll discuss it for a period of time and then we'll move on. Recognizing that we may have to agree to disagree.
Do you think that having that discussion as the next step is the best approach? Or I was going to go back to the idea of kind of dividing up assignments and having people write strawman kind of positions around these things. Maybe that's a more effective way to move toward a final report.
I don't
Whether
think
it's a table
I don't think
or
it's time
something
to
else.
start the final report yet, and I think that's kind of where you're headed to kind of create the narrative for that. Let's talk about what the strengths and weaknesses are,
Yeah,
and once we can come to a decision on that, then maybe we can start to look at narratives.
I was thinking that trying to put it down in writing might be useful from a clarity point of view rather than just an open discussion. Not necessarily
We
that it
put
would be
together a
used in
writing
final
committee
report.
right now. We're not going to have those narratives done for next week.
No, but I was
We-
thinking that maybe we
Kristen
could take
and
next week
Brian
off
and I
and come
took a
back in
while on
January
this.
with them.
One, and that was a simple one.
Yeah.
What are the recommendations?
Yeah.
This narrative that we're talking about, what are the strengths and weaknesses? This is not gonna be a simple one. We need to get some clarity on what we think are the strengths and weaknesses. And then we can go to the narratives, and you'll find that once we do, let's do the strengths and weaknesses on the 15th. We've got a break over the holidays. Let's come back on the 12th and see what we've got in the way of narratives.
Okay, it's fair.
If we can do something worthwhile, fine, and if we can't, we'll go on to something else on the 12th.
Yeah, another week of discussion doesn't hurt.
Well, I think we still need to decide, as Phil was pointing out, what are strengths, what are weaknesses, where do they apply?
Okay.
Right, to add on to that, I think I see where you're going in the sense that we have these all these are categorized under current form, strengths and weaknesses, alternate form, strengths and weaknesses. But what we did is we went through and said, this is an opinion, this is a fact. We really never addressed if, okay, it's a fact, but is it a strength under the current form?
Correct.
We didn't do that part.
Right, and I think that's what Dave's
Yeah,
suggesting we
right.
do next week.
Yes.
Right, that's, I was just trying to pull that all together. That's what I heard that we're gonna do next week.
I mean, no distinctions are not an issue, but facts may or may not be strengths, weaknesses. Opinions definitely may or may not be strengths, weaknesses. And facts, I don't think we have to worry about agreeing on them. Opinions, that's where we may have to agree to disagree.
Well, I mean, we may disagree on whether it's a strength or a weakness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier, the need to do redistricting is a fact if we go to the alternate form. Whether that's a strength or a weakness is debatable.
Yeah. So, if we have reached that position where we're willing to come back to this and discuss strengths and weaknesses next week, then I think we can close this particular item, 8B, and move on to the next meeting agendas. I don't see any objections, so I will assume consent. December 15th, then, we have set up to discuss strengths and weaknesses. Within the structure of what we have here, facts and opinions, what are strengths, what are weaknesses, and where do they lie? There's not a lot of point in duplicating, so if one is a strength in one and a weakness in the other, we can kind of hit that at the same time. We don't have to go through and make two separate issues. So, December 22nd, 29th, I think we can still go dark. I don't see an issue with that, assuming we make enough headway next week that we aren't still out in left field here. I'm satisfied that we made a good deal of headway this week, and I think that if we can kind of do this next week, we can get going on this stuff. January 5th, I would say let's wait until we finish next week to decide whether we need to come back, but potentially because of the proximity to the holidays, we're going to go dark on the 5th. But not a decision yet.
Sounds reasonable.
January 12th, we'll be back. Whatever we need to deal with, the 15th will allow us to also determine what will happen on the 12th. We have talked potentially about the 19th being the public hearing. Unless there is an objection, I think we should finalize the 19th as being the public hearing.
I'm in favor of that.
I am too.
No objections?
No objection, but are we going to need an opinion from, a legal opinion regarding the structure of the public hearing? In other words, if it goes on till midnight or something?
I have been told that we can adjourn the public hearing if we need to, and take up the public hearing at the next properly noticed meeting.
Got it.
So, I would say that hopefully, we would be able to close it out in one night, but if it has to roll over to the 26th, it is possible for us to do so. The only thing I know of for a properly noticed meeting is 48 hours notice. So we can't do the next day. So if we're meeting on Wednesday and we really want to get it through that week, we could properly notice a Friday meeting, although I don't think that's a good idea.
I think
Friday nights are not
bumping to
good
the
for me.
26th for a continuance is reasonable.
Yeah. So we can properly notice a meeting on the 26th if we need to for a continuation. Obviously, the people that are here would know that, because we'd be saying that night when we adjourn. So,
Does it have the same structure that the individuals can only speak for a certain period of time?
I would say we should, the best thing would be to follow the
Is that right?
structure of what we did for public comment. Come in, sign up. You have a limited amount of time.
Right, but there would be no limit on the number of people who could sign up in the
That's
case
right.
of the public or
Right.
hearing.
But it would be limited.
And don't we have to allow for online as well in the public hearing?
I don't know that we have to allow online. That's something we've talked about being beneficial. It would be a matter of how we would achieve it. We have not been that good with Zoom, quite frankly. I would hate to say, okay, we're going to have a Zoom meeting and everybody's free to come in and comment, and we overload our Zoom and we can't do it. That would not be fair to the people
I
who
think
wanna
we'd be
do it.
better off to just do a phone only audio. And that seems to
There needs
have
to be
worked better
something.
in the past, but yeah, I do think we need some mechanism for
I think it
remote.
would be beneficial. I don't think we need to do something. But I
Let's,
think it would
let's
be
see what the
benefit-
county can do, accommodate for a remote participation, and we've got 6 weeks to get that sorted out.
So I think if you do that, it would be helpful to have someone in the facilitating role of people who are perhaps submitting comments on, lining up online in Zoom or something to submit comments, and somebody who facilitates that rollout of people online being able to speak. You know, I think Nancy did something
Agreed.
like that, yeah.
Caller number 5, you're on now.
Right, something like that,
Yeah, and, you know, do we prioritize the people who come in here to speak? Do we alternate back and forth? Do we give people who might phone in a place ahead of people who've been sitting here for 20 minutes or a half hour, an hour?
This is
These
why.
are- There's structural items that need to be
Yeah.
discussed and how we're going to work it out.
This is why I know it's not popular, but I actually think we need to come here and, I mean, assuming it's not gonna be 2 a.m, I think we need to not set an arbitrary time, because we've got people waiting on the phone, we've got people sitting here, and we're gonna shut it off and say, you've gotta come back next week. I think that we really need to just sit here and let people, communicate what they feel, until it becomes unreasonable, and we can as a group decide what's unreasonable, and we can notify people in advance, but I would really hate for somebody who might not be able to do it on the 26th, they've made the effort to come here, they've made the effort, they've been on the phone for 2.5 hours listening, and then all of a sudden we're saying, oh, time's up. So, I'm just throwing that out, I don't wanna pull an all-nighter either, but, I actually wanna be fair to people too. And maybe the residents don't wanna pull an all-nighter, but, you know,
Maybe
they
we'll
may
finish,
hang up.
maybe
So-
we'll finish in 2 hours like we did for the public comment.
Yeah, so I just would hate to put an arbitrary time on it, yet I understand that if we don't do that, then we probably can't shut it down. So I'm just throwing it out.
No, we would be able to, if it's over by 10 o'clock, not an issue. If it's 3 a.m. and it's still going and we've got a long list of people waiting to go, I don't see a problem with us at
Yeah,
that point,
okay.
calling for an end,
Yeah.
adjourning until the 26th.
Right. Well, basically,
And
you,
somewhere between those two, that's a decision we're going to have to make that night.
actually, you've made me feel better already. I think we need to push it beyond, you know, we start getting antsy now when it's 8:30, 8:45. I think we need to understand that maybe in this circumstance, we need to,
I wouldn't expect that we would call it until midnight.
Okay.
But
I can do that too. I know Brian Cleary doesn't have a problem with this because he's a night owl too, so,
People yell at me all day, so
yeah.
I can deal with it.
Yes.
What are the mechanics, this recommendation that we gave final approval to today, that gets posted publicly, or is that, what happens to that?
Well, the phrase is published, and what I was told is it's published by being placed on the website.
Okay.
The other things, I think we need to,
Be like an
try to
announcement.
do a press release on it and get, this in the paper, whatever approach, works to get the public noticed that here's what it is, and you're going to have a chance to come in on January 19th to discuss it.
That latter part is what I was getting at, which is notice of the meeting. It would be combined in with that recommendation.
Won't be
and
on the
published.
document, but it would be at the same time,
Published,
yes.
okay, because I was going through the prior study commission's materials and noticed how they had a flyer that they generated that was notice of the meeting and had some details about the alternate forms and.
Yeah, technically, we have to give notice 4 weeks in advance.
Yep,
Our decision tonight, publishing tomorrow, we're just about 6 weeks.
good,
Okay, tonight would be 6 weeks away. So we're okay on the notice. As far as other forms of notification, I don't think we have any times limits on those, but as soon as practical, we need to get various methods out there for people to be aware. You can find the recommendations on this website, you can find the recommendations in the newspaper, you can find the recommendations wherever we can get them. And on the 19th, in this room, we will be here to take public hearing, for a public hearing, take public comment.
Well, we're presuming this room, I mean, subject to other logistical arrangements by the county, right?
Well, we'll just take possession of this room at that point. We were already told that, Jonathan, was it the 2nd of February would be a problem?
Yep, 2nd of February, we're just gonna be able to have half the room.
So if they are telling us that we can't have the full room on the 2nd of February, the 19th of January, they would have already advised us. I hate to presume things, but sometimes we have to. So, we are set then through the 19th, possibly 26th. If we finish the public hearing on the 19th, we will move to deliberations on the 26th. If we have to continue the hearing on the 26th, then it will just depend on how long it is before we decide whether we're going to deliberate or move the deliberations to the 2nd of February.
Given the legal advice that we received, that what we've been doing, our deliberations now, I have no objection. It just means we go back to doing what we were doing before the public hearing.
We go back to doing what we were doing before the public hearing, but the point is, we're now taking into account the comments that
Of
we
course.
received during the public hearing.
Of course.
Wait, did Jonathan say we'll only have half the room on the 2nd?
Yes, that section right there will be there, will be moved either up to the dais or right in front of it so that we have more room for the people on
Okay.
in the rest of this
Or
room.
we may.
Or we may go dark that night.
also. Some of us may do Zoom to be able to free up more space too, on the 2nd.
Or Kurt, yeah.
Or
if it's an
we go
issue.
dark that night if it's an issue.
I don't think we necessarily need to go dark just because we only have half the room.
I mean, we could have done it, it all depends on.
Yeah.
We could
How
have done
many
it
people?
tonight with the audience we have, yeah. right.
If we didn't have
Agreed.
tables out here, we could easily have had everybody in the
Yeah.
half a room tonight,
Okay.
so.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Your motion is out of order. We haven't called tonight yet. Let's make it simple. Anybody object to adjourning?
Oh,
We are adjourned.
thank you. What time you have, Dave?
That one says 8:40.